What is up? Good evening and welcome to a very special episode of Mock It Like It's Hot. I was told by Josh Hudson this morning it's our 70th episode, but that is not the only reason it is special. It is special because for the second time on Club Fantasy's airwaves and the first time on Mock It Like It's Hot, we are doing an actual live draft. That's right. It's not a mock this week. It's real. It's time for the Mock It Like It's Hot Listener League. Let's get into it. What is up? Good evening and welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot, Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. No co-host this week, but a special guest nonetheless. If you take a look down at the name, you will recognize Philadelphia from doing just about every mock draft with us this entire mock draft season. But today, it's a real draft, and he is doing the show with us. Alec, welcome to Club Fantasy. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing super fantastic. How are you doing today?
Hey, it's a real draft night, and believe it or not, other than Scott Fishbowl, this might be my first actual redraft draft of the entire season so far. So I'm excited.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited too. This will be my second draft, so
okay,
I'm looking forward to this.
So I'm going to give you time to introduce yourself and all that in just a few moments, but this is also a real draft at 2-minute clocks, and I don't want this thing to take forever, so I'm going to start the clock. Calvin looks like he's in the room. He's going to get everything started. I'm going to go ahead and get the draft up on the screen as soon as it lets me click over here. So now that we get the draft started, a couple of quick housekeeping things before we start to talk a little bit. As you guys may have noticed in years past, we have a wonderful partnership I want to talk to you guys about. We are honored to talk about the sister site's new partnership, sister site being Women of Fantasy Football with TrophySmack. If you head over to TrophySmack.com/WOFF and start shopping for all your achievement-based needs. Do you want a draft board so that you can do an offline draft like we did a few years ago, the first time we ever did a live draft? Or how about a championship belt like the very cool one that I won back in 2020? TrophySmack has it all. They have you covered. Head over to TrophySmack.com/WOFF, and all of the proceeds that we make during the month of August will directly go to our Women of Fantasy Football initiative, which is the scholarship program with Laurel Oakman's Galvanize. That is an organization that helps women get all the tools they need to succeed in sports media. You'll find links in the description of this video to various TrophySmack products, and I'm actually going to talk to you guys about some of those TrophySmack products here in just a second, but make sure you guys are doing that. It's the best and easiest way to support the show. A quick rundown of the draft before I let Alec start to introduce himself and talk a little bit more here. As mentioned, this is a real draft. We're not playing anymore. So this is real. It is a 12-team draft. It is PPR. It is super tight end premium. And what I mean by that is it a full extra point of PPR so that those tight ends have a little bit of flex appeal. It is just a 1 QB draft. But more importantly, I was not going to charge our listeners any money. This is a free league. However, if you followed Club Fantasy for any time, you know that I am a kept man. So you guys are playing for my wife's money. I'm going to give her a $50 cash prize to the winner of this league, along with a 1-year subscription to Football Guys. And the wonderful Gator J recently let me know he is also committing a TrophySmack championship ring to the winner of this league. So we have a lot going on for our listeners. Let me introduce our drafters, and then we'll talk about Alec here in a second. So Bro Cal is picking from the 1 spot. Vince Mapstone at 2. Alec, you took the 3 spot. Shia LaBeouf at 4. My normal former co-host, I just fired Austin already. Normal co-host Austin at 5. My British friend Lewis Hall, who is drafting from England. It's like super late over there right now. He is drunken at a bachelor party. He is picking from the 6 spot. Old Boy from the 7. Wendy Early from the 8. I am at the 9. That's right. You get a draft with me in it. Czar at the 10. Duarte at the 11. And Scampers at the 12. Those are all names that you are going to recognize if you have paid any attention to Club Fantasy. Alex, that is my little spiel to start the show. But once again, welcome. I like to let people who don't do weekly shows and things like that kind of start off by introducing themselves. So let people know how long you've been playing fantasy, what drew you to fantasy. The fact that you're an Eagles fan is pretty evident, but what team you root for, all that kind of stuff.
Well, first off, fly Eagles fly. Let's go.
I love it.
Gotta take the W this year. All right. So my name is Alec, but many people know me as Zion from the chats and whatnot on YouTube, or maybe from the Discord, Sir Terry Tay Woo. That name's kind of funny because that came from the old Reebok commercials. If you ever saw those, that terrible Terry Tay office linebacker kind of thing. So that's how I originally came up with that name. I've just been doing fantasy for over 10 years. I started being a commissioner about 7 years ago. I just really loved fantasy. I loved everything about it. I love the community. Got a chance to meet some great people like yourself, or Ryan.
Yeah.
Great guy. I'm just, like I said, I'm just happy to be here, representing the Eagles and representing Ray Lewis a little bit. Get all the excitement out there.
I have to say, of any guest I've ever had on the show, you certainly have come the first one to come with the war paint on. You put it out there. This might be I was going to call it a mock draft. I'm so used to this. It's not a mock draft, but it's early in the season, but you're here to win, right?
Yeah, no, I'm here to win. Whether it's a mock draft, Shia knows this. Whether it's a mock or it's a real thing, I'm always here to win. I don't care if it's a mock or not, because you should always treat mock drafts like they are real drafts. That's 100%. What's important.
I always tell people mock drafts get a lot of hate on Twitter recently. But I still use them to in my opinion, to good reason. I did 3 mock drafts of this draft before that, and I'm prepping for we have another club fantasy draft starting this up Monday. I did mock drafts for that draft. It gives you an idea of where people are going to fall, how sites have players that you liked ranked, just a lot of different ways that you can use mock drafts. So you said you've been playing for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. Have you found the usefulness of mock drafts going back that far? I feel like back then, mock drafts were pretty popular and they made a lot of sense. I feel like lately, with the kind of rise of best ball, people have been kind of anti-mock draft.
So I've been doing mock drafts, pretty much since the beginning. Actually, back in the day when I first started, I would actually look at online articles and whatnot. Oh, this is the strategy that will get you like the win. I was like, oh, cool. And I learned about all the different strategies. So then I would go into mock drafts against people. And then eventually I stumbled upon Sleeper here, and I realized that Sleeper is just so much better in like every way. The fact I can customize it to modify things to how I would expect my league mates to draft, or I can post it with random people who will leave within the first 2 rounds, because why not? But yeah, no, I've been mocking pretty much since the beginning, because I think it's important that you do so you can get an idea and a list of players you'd want to draft.
Yeah, and I think you hit another perfect nail on the head. There's a lot of great sites out there, third-party sites, where you can do mock drafts. I work for Football Guys. You can do mock drafts through their app, Fantasy Pros. But there is nothing like mock drafting from the site you're going to be drafting on. You mentioned Sleeper, because you get an idea of where people's ADP is, where they appear on list, because eventually there are players that you're going to really like that the site maybe doesn't like as much as you, and you got to remember to go look for those guys. I remember 2 years ago, where Odell Beckham, there was the injury thing and people weren't quite sure when he was going to come back, and he felt like a value pick, but his ADP was in like the 500s because nobody was drafting him. So you had to know on Sleeper that you had to scroll to find Odell Beckham. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Once you find the site that you're drafting on, make sure you're also doing the mock drafts on that site. I think that's really, really sound advice there, because you got to get comfortable with the site you're going to be doing the draft on. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned your Discord, and that was something I definitely wanted to give you some time to talk about. So talk a little bit about the Discord, how people can join it if they want. What was your inspiration for starting it?
Oh, man, just put me right on the spot, don't we? No, I'm kidding. I love it. I love it. So my Discord, for those who don't know yet, what are you doing, by the way? Just kidding. So I run a Discord. I pretty much created it as a fantasy hub network. So when I originally came up with the idea last year in December, after our league just finished our season, I'm always looking for new ways to be innovative. How can I make things better? I want to be that guy to where everyone always talks about, hey, do you remember that league or that thing? I like it because it's all different. So the server I came up with was originally designed for my leagues, because I had at the time, I had 5 of them. But then I thought, no, let's make it into a fantasy hub network where everybody who makes content can go there freely. They don't have to worry about being harassed by people constantly like they do on Twitter wars and whatnot. So I made that, but then I wanted to make it more expansive. So then I started incorporating things that I know I would do for my leagues, such as being able to poll for things, maybe make a game out of it. Right now we're doing a big poll tournament, you could call it. where you just guess what the preseason games, like who's going to be the winner, and at the end of it, the top 3 will get a cool little title that's put next to their name. It'll be like King of Preseason Fantasy or preseason, something like that. And they'll have like a little crown emoji next to it. So that way they can feel like extra cool. It really does nothing. It's just for bragging rights. So I created a server. It's going great. Literally everything you could find that you would want for fantasy would be there. So if you wanted to look up anything with the AIs I have built in, the bots I have built in there, like, I don't know, a particular year someone was drafted, or stats on a player, the weather of the upcoming games, injury reports, yada, yada, articles, you can find it there. Same with journalists there too. If you hear anything in the background, it's my dog. She's just being
no worries at all. Horrible. We all have pets. We know how it goes.
Yes. She's wanting second dinners, and I already know that she had dinner, so she can't fool me. She's trying so hard with the puppy dog eyes. It's not working.
I say you have a little hobbit dog that's there for second lunch or whatever.
Yes. So that's kind of the server. My goal with it is just to get as many people in there who love fantasy, who want a deeper dive into fantasy. That's why I like guys like you who do those kinds of things. It makes it so it flourishes, and it's just overall good company there. So yeah, and it's free to join.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I forgot to grab the link, or actually I don't even know if I have the link. If that's something you want to drop in the chat here, or if you drop it in the draft chat, I can drop it into the chat here if you're looking to get more people who are watching the show who want to join your Discord. I was really impressed by the bots you have set up, because as you pointed out, there's weather bots and all this other stuff. It was everybody jokes I'm the old man, it's the gray beard. I'm not fluent in Discord at all, but I was extremely impressed with what you had set up when you invited me there. So I appreciate it. And our buddy Shia, the Equinox, is also pointing out it's a great Discord. Come have some fun with us. So he's saying let's get some people in there. So and then I would be remiss if I didn't point out for our buddy Lou Hall. It is 1:12 in the morning in Great Britain right now. He's having a sausage roll and drafting with a bunch of champions. We appreciate you, Lewis. It's great to be drafting with you, my friend. Hopefully we can keep this thing moving and keep you awake for the entire draft, because I imagine it's going to be interesting. Alec, I like to start off these shows with a little bit of NFL news, and then I'll kind of let you react if any of this really matters to you or if any of it stands out to you. The news that I pulled is pretty much the same news from Wednesday. I didn't really see much extra news happen over the last 2 days. Obviously, there's the J.J. McCarthy torn meniscus. He is going to miss his entire rookie season. If you follow the defensive side of the ball, the Falcons add Justin Simmons and Matthew Judon this week to a defense that they've really wanted to revamp. I'm going to be interested to see how the Falcons look. Hollywood Brown, it is a shoulder clavicle injury. It's essentially a separated shoulder. It is very similar to the injury that Tyreek had a few years ago while he was with the Chiefs, where he missed, I believe, 4 games. Brown is likely to miss 4 to 6 weeks, not of the regular season, but 4 to 6 weeks. And his name is being floated as a possible IR candidate. And then with you as an Eagles fan, I wanted to maybe get your take on the Hassan Reddick situation. He complains his way out of Philadelphia, but now he's refusing to show up for the Jets. So with the NFL news, any of those stories matter to you? What are your thoughts, at least on Hassan Reddick?
So I'll talk about Hassan first. Loved the player when he was an Eagle. And I was talking to my buddy the other day about it. And I was like, Hassan really just screwed himself over big time. Like, you went from a team that is in Super Bowl talks to a team to where all you did was be an added good player for them, and you're not even going to play for them right now because you're too busy whining and groaning about, I want more money. I want more money. He's a tremendous player, but it's more of a headache at this point. So Eagles won this trade for sure. If you look at Bryce Huff, who we got, the amount of snaps he played, the amount of sacks he got, I think it was what was it, like 10 or something like that? Or
I believe he was a double-digit sack guy.
Yeah, and he played, I don't know on top of my head, but he had like a low amount of snap count, which tells me the way the Eagles run their defensive line in rotation, he's a perfect fit for that. And gosh darn, you sniped Henry from me. Oh my gosh. Then again, I expect that from him.
Well, and that's what's unique about this draft is a lot of you folks have been drafting together for months with us while they've been sleeper drafts. And obviously, Shia outside of our mock draft shows in sleeper. But like I said, a lot of you, every name in here is very recognizable as someone who's drafted with us. To be honest, that was the only way you were going to get this invite anyway, because we shared it during the shows for people who watch our shows. So it made a ton of sense. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of snipes. And I definitely want you to let me know when that happens, because I do find that very interesting. I feel like this is a good group that's not going to go on tilt with snipes. I recently was, as I mentioned, at Scott Fishbowl Live in New York City, and Lewis and Josh Hudson from Club Fantasy were in that draft. And the first half of the draft, the expectation in a super flex was that it would be all quarterbacks. So I have the 11th pick, and I had done everything in my mind as if the first 6 picks would be quarterbacks. And in a lot of mocks, Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall was falling to me at 11. And it was all running backs and wide receivers. And all of a sudden I'm staring at quarterbacks. And I'm not going to lie to you, I tilted and panic picked. I have been playing fantasy for 20 years. I've been doing live drafts almost that entire time. I don't tilt, I don't panic pick, and I just grab Dak Prescott. Now, keep in mind, I love Dak Prescott, but I also like value, and I don't think he was the right pick at the 111. I mean, I don't hate my team when I look back at it now, but that's something to think about when you're doing these mock drafts and when you're doing drafts in general is, what are you going to do if your guy's not there?
No, you're absolutely right. Actually, to touch back a little bit ago, Vince first took Tyreek Hill from me. Gosh darn. I had jokes written for each player that if they landed for me that I was going to tell, and they were going to be just hilarious jokes. And then you took Kelsey. I was like, gosh darn it. Jeez. Y'all are just crazy, but I love it. Obviously I came to play and so did y'all. So I definitely appreciate that. It makes this draft more interesting.
So I do my own projections. And so with our league scoring, I went in because I knew hosting and drafting is a nightmare sometimes.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
And I set up my entire queue with all of the players in order of my projections. Now, I got to pay attention to ADP because they're just in order of my projections. So I don't want to make sure I don't reach. Kelsey was the top player in my queue. But the problem was because this tight end premium, that's why he was top. It was Kelsey, LaPorta, McBride, Andrews. They were all there near towards the top. And so I was like, well, I'm going to get one tight end when it comes back around. So let me grab AJ Brown here, which I thought might get a rise out of you. But I'm a Jahmyr Gibbs guy through and through. And so I passed on Gibbs wondering what might happen there because I'm scared about the hamstring. I'm not going to lie to you, Alec. I'm scared about the hamstring. So I took AJ Brown and I hilariously almost immediately regretted it.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So actually it's funny. Vince went for the strategy that I was hoping to get. Yeah, no, I was really hoping for that, but that's okay. That's fine. I would gladly take Kincaid instead because I do believe Kincaid, the upside for him is that he could finish anywhere from first to third. I truly do
100%.
on that Bills atrocious offense. When I say atrocious, I don't mean it's bad, just that there's really no target, competition there. It's really Coleman and Kincaid. Those two are going to eat up the majority of targets. So if
Coleman still needs to establish himself and
he does. Which is why looking at the tight end, I think that it's just a good pick here, especially with that premium. That premium makes it really juicy. Because I was looking at your scoring and I was looking at the top 100 players, which, by the way, for everybody listening out there, you should always do that. Yep. In your league, you should always look at your league scoring. You should always look at the top 100, or if you're an IDP, maybe top 150-ish players, just to kind of get an idea of how you might want to prepare yourself or who to target. So going into a heavy tight end premium like this, you should definitely look at tight ends like, oh yeah, that'd be a great grab to get in the first 3 rounds.
I love that. And I also wanted to point out, it can help you find weirdness. Austin took a look at the top 100 players as soon as I set the scoring and realized that I had maybe favored team defense a little bit too much. That's right, folks. I do have team defense and kicker in my leagues. I have not gave into the peer pressure and gotten rid of them. But Austin showed that maybe I gave team defense a little bit too much, so we were able to kick that scoring down. And then you helped me pump the tight ends up a little bit so that they would be more flex worthy. And so we found a lot of really interesting things just by looking at that. I do want to hit the comments up. First and foremost, Alec, I don't think we've ever had someone just complimented that they're out here looking hot as hell from Shayla. So congratulations to you there.
Oh, thanks.
Scampers has pointed out that he's at the opposite end of the draft from Vince. Again, these folks have drafted together in mock drafts for ages now. And Caesar, who is one spot behind me, said they were convinced I was going to take Gibbs at 9 there. And so was I. I'm just terrified. I get scared of these injuries, especially soft tissue injuries. How much you brought up Hassan Reddick, so you obviously follow defense a little bit. Do you think the addition of Justin Simmons and Matthew Judon can take Atlanta, who's kind of been this defense who's on the verge of doing something special? Do you think this is something that can put them into a fantasy relevant defense on some of the harder matchups? I always say when I talk defenses, no defense is unplayable, but you got to have the right weeks. Is Atlanta starting to become a team that might be a little bit interesting on even the wrong weeks?
So Atlanta, and again, I was talking to my friend who's a big-time Patriots fan. Typically, I have like a friend for like every team. So that way I can say, hey, how do you feel about this? So Atlanta, I love the acquisition of Judon more. I know that when healthy, Judon is a sacking machine. He commands that outside very well. That defense in general is looking pretty good. I remember it wasn't too long ago that people thought, that Atlanta Falcons, they look really sneaky. They could be a good team, and then they just couldn't get together because Arthur Smith is not only the death for the Falcons, but also death for fantasy owners too. So it's kind of that way. But yes, I think Atlanta Falcons in general would be a great team to get. And if you play in IDP, there's several good players now on that defense that you can get. Like both of their safeties are great. Judon is great. Actually, I'm glad because I was starting to worry that I had too many players in my queue for my league that had bye weeks 14, and I'm just like, ugh, because that's like the worst week to have a bunch of bye weeks for.
And it's a crazy season for it. It seems like there are so many good teams on bye in week 14.
Yeah, no. All the players that I like, and I joked with this with someone who I mocked with when we do IDP. I said, man, why are all these linebackers I love have to have a bye week 14? This is annoying. Now I have to pivot.
For me, it's been week 12 running backs. When I was doing all my best ball drafts, the running backs I love and the 3 that are coming, I'm forgetting one. Oh, I think it's Etienne. Travis Etienne, Bijan Robinson, and James Cook are all guys, and I'm giving away names that haven't been drafted yet, though I just landed Etienne, are all guys that I really like. And they all have week 12 buys, which is a pain in the ass when you're drafting best ball rosters. So it's just one of those things that you have to keep an eye on. But it is interesting. It seems like 12 and 14 are the weeks that people are getting hit the worst with. Normally, I would recap the first 3 rounds of the draft, guys. Right now, I'm probably going to let this thing go to round 5, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening after round 5. But yeah, the bye weeks are interesting, and you don't necessarily need to talk about your strategy, but is there a point in the draft for a redraft league where we are allowing trading? Is there a point where you will start to freak out in a redraft league about bye weeks, or with waivers and trades, is that not something that really comes into your strategy?
No, not so much worried in a redraft league. Only unless you play in my league. If you play in my leagues, then absolutely week 14 can be the death of you. So outside of that, no. I look at it as that it's a long season, but fantasy is a weekly season.
Yeah.
So you should really look at it if you're going to go into these any league. Injuries happen. You may think you draft the perfect team, and then boom, you get hit with several injuries, and then you're panicking. One, don't panic. You need to, if you're going to trade, you want to trade smart. You look at what everyone else has, who are going to, or what are people going to need? And if you can provide that to them, then you get it to them. Now, that's where you can then judge on how badly do you need that replacement at running back because you lost your first 2. Versus how they don't have, let's say, a quarterback or a wide receiver to save their life. You can really value that. Sometimes what I like to do in drafts that I do, there are 2 players that I want because on my list, they're neck and neck. And unfortunately, if they both land to me, I know I can't get both. Yeah. So I look at it, and the tiebreaker for me is typically, what does the playoff weeks look like? And if which one has more favorable matchups that I truly believe based off of what that team has on their roster and the current coaching staff. Like, okay, so I'm more convinced that this, let's say, running back A has a greater finish, but a harder, let's say, beginning, but the middle will be great. And then the other one is the reverse effect.
Yeah.
So if I draft running back B, who has a great beginning but have a hard end, I know that once he's hit all of his value, because that's the thing, because fantasy is weekly, the value for every player changes after the draft happens.
Absolutely.
So if you have a running back that's just skyrocketing, doing great, he's phenomenal, he's like a top 10 back, and the other guy's struggling, but you know what his ceiling can be, you can always use that as, hey, I'm going to either A, trade for this guy, or B, that person's going to get so frustrated with that guy that he's going to drop him because he's tired of seeing him put up below his average or below what he's supposed to hit. Then I'll be the one who will pick him up because I know that his true value will be in the playoffs. And like I tell all my league mates, I don't care if you beat me in the regular season. I don't care what my record is in the regular season. Guess what matters? The playoffs. If I go undefeated when it matters, it doesn't matter to me how my regular season looks. So that's how you should look at it.
I think that's awesome is using those secondary things about a person as the tiebreaker, not so much the deciding factor on why you're going to take a guy. And Gage points out trade bait. You have a guy who might end up being wonderful trade bait later on in the season, and that's something to think about. And it's one of those things where, again, just to reiterate the point you made, because it is such a very good point, and it's not one I've heard mentioned very often lately, is don't use the weird stats as your deciding factor. Use them as your tiebreaker. I think that's going to just work out better for you and everybody else involved in that situation. There's a little bit of a situation I wanted to run by you because it's probably at the tip of everybody's mind right now. Brandon Aiyuk goes to Duarte with the 4-2. I am pretty big on Deebo Samuel. I was able to get him 2 picks later. Where do you stand on this Brandon Aiyuk San Francisco 49ers kind of showdown that's happening?
I'm going to go against what the media wants everyone to say. And I'm just going to say this is typical wide receiver diva action. I mean, literally that's what they'll do. And 2, the 49ers are one of the few teams in NFL, if you really look at their history, to where when the media talks and glorifies everything that they do, by glorify I mean talk about, in this case, let's say Brandon Aiyuk, whereas before it was Deebo, is he going to get a contract, is he not? Oh, they're going to trade him, they're definitely going to trade him. You know, the media loves to hype things up to like scare us fantasy owners, honestly, but you know, it's more so I don't think anything's really going to happen because it's been already reported that these trades would have already happened if he just agreed to them, and he did not. So because he did not, I doubt that he's honestly going to get traded, at least not at the start of the season. Maybe towards the middle, if they're really fed up with him and if they can just find a suitor that would want him, like a wide receiver needy team, then yeah, maybe. But no, I don't buy into the whole – whenever something's talked about the 49ers, they historically don't do what the media tells them to do. So it's – pretty much, they're not the Cowboys, all right? The Cowboys will do whatever the media wants because they love the attention.
That's fair. It's an interesting point because you bring up him possibly being traded during the season, and the stereotypical situation where we would see that is that Team A loses their star wide receiver, but is 5-1 and certainly in Super Bowl contention. But the interesting thing is, I almost feel like that would also have to be an AFC team. I couldn't see San Francisco doing that. If Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down and the Detroit Lions are calling, San Francisco, I don't think is even answering that phone, or at the very least, they're charging Detroit a premium because that's their direct competition to get to the Super Bowl from the NFC.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Very rarely do I see a team, like, especially if you're talking about like within the same division, make a trade to each other. I mean, the Giants just did with the Cowboys, but it's not like it was for a huge piece. You know, it's for depth because that's what they needed. They needed depth. So yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. I'm just waiting to see what he does because him and I love to be, of course, him and I love to be the American snipers, just sniping everybody's picks. But no, he's bullying me right now, my guy. That's fine.
Yeah. I was gonna say, and that's the fun of drafting with friends. I'll be doing my home league draft in 10 days now, and that one we all get in person, and you just hear people getting screamed at all the time about their awful picks and everything. Going back to the news segment, JJ McCarthy out for his year now. It was pretty widely reported that Sam Darnold was likely to be the starter, at least up front anyway. He's likely to be the starter the entire year now. Does that change your opinion on Justin Jefferson, who was the 5th pick of this draft, or a secondary guy like Jordan Addison, who we may not see go for another 5 rounds?
So Jettas is, in my opinion, and always has been since he's proven it, to be that dog. He has proven that he can be a wide receiver 1. I do think that he's QB proof. He is one of the few receivers that are young, that are so talented, who can make plays happen out of thin air. Doesn't matter who's throwing to him. Yes, will it hurt his numbers? Sure, it will. Will he be wide receiver 1? Probably not. But if you're getting him at spot 5 or 6, it's right there where he should be. He should be a top 5 receiver anyways this year. It's terrible what happened to McCarthy. And Sam Darnold is, Sam Darnold. He's not great.
No, I don't think any other analysis needs to be made on Sam Darnold. He is Sam Darnold.
But look at it like this: who do they have that's going to compete with targets? They have Addison and him, because they don't have Hawkinson.
Yeah,
he's hurt, and none of the other wide receivers are really of any threats. Their running backs, maybe Ty Chandler is really good for being a 3rd down switch pace back for now until Aaron Jones decides to get hurt and go, my leg. But until then, no, he's just a great pick. I feel like the real question should be, who would you rather have? Would you rather have a unknown, or we do know what Sam Darnold is, but a unknown finish for JJ, or would you rather have Jamar Chase, but knowing that Joe Burrow is once again having, I guess, issues with I think it's his wrist or something, or calf.
Ooh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so it's like he's always having issues. So even though anyone likes to just gush over Jamar Chase, JJ's had a better career with a quarterback who is good with statistics. Yes, Kirk Cousins good with statistics, but Joe Burrow is supposed to be like, everyone talks about Joe Burrow like he is 1,000 times better than Kirk Cousins, at least fantasy-wise, which if that's the case, then that means Jamar Chase should have already eclipsed being a top 3 wide receiver multiple times, but he hasn't. So I guess, who would you rather pick? Would you rather pick JJ Jettas, or would you rather pick Jamar Chase?
For me, it's still Justin Jefferson for the reasons you said. I think what we saw last year from Justin Jefferson, we've already seen him with bad QB play. Say what you want about Sam Darnold, but it's hard to put him below Josh Dobbs and Jaron Hall. And Jefferson still found a way to be for points a top 10 wide receiver at that point. But you hit on kind of the next question I was going to ask you, and you kind of had to live this scenario. Vince, you just auto-picked. If you happen to be watching the show right now, make sure you turn yourself off auto. You already did. Good job, buddy. But you kind of bring up an interesting scenario that I want to hit. There's a lot of turbulence with the top wide receivers in fantasy right now, and you kind of made a decision to stay completely away from that turbulence. So you have CeeDee Lamb, last year's number 1 wide receiver, in a contract dispute. His quarterback is also in a contract dispute, and that whole team just is a upset mess right now. You have Jamar Chase in a contract dispute, and now a quarterback who's oft injured, has only played 16 games twice in his 4-year career, and apparently is hurt again. Justin Jefferson, not a contract dispute, but has the quarterback issues. And you pivot away from all of them and take Amon-Ra St. Brown as the 2nd wide receiver off the board. And I find that's interesting. We did a show with the guys from Fantrax when we were getting, or not Fantrax, I'm sorry, Razzball a few weeks ago when we were getting ready for the Razz Bowl. And they had the same take that Justin Jefferson, they said behind CeeDee Lamb, but they had the same take that Amon-Ra St. Brown should be the 2nd pick off of the board. So obviously you agree with that.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just deciding between which 3 players that I want, because all 3 right here, I'm just doing my little thing where I'm like, okay, well, that looks more favorable. That looks better kind of thing. Looks like, yeah, okay. That's fine. I'll go with that.
I love it.
All right. Anyway, sorry.
Well, no, you're fine, because actually I want to give people a little bit into how the Kool-Aid's made, if you will, because literally I was dragging that question on, trying to give you time to make your pick.
Yeah, no, I'm so sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, don't ever apologize. But you kind of made the decision that you're gonna avoid the drama at wide receiver right now, and you're gonna take Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah. Oh, easily. And there's a simple solution to that. Amon-Ra is the next wide receiver that I think truly could finish wide receiver 1 this year. And it's either him or Tyreek. I don't think CD is going to do it. Sorry, Cowboy fans. I get it. I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm a big-time hater. But no, I'm sorry. But CD Lamb did it last year, mostly because Tyreek Hill missed some time. That's just the facts that are there. Now, do I think CD couldn't finish his top 3? Of course he can. He's got no other competition there. Literally, he would have to get injured for him not to finish in top 3 or top 5 as wide receivers go. But no, Amon-Ra St. Brown every year takes huge leaps forward. I would rather have a guy like that who has this impressive resume to be the, if you want to call it sleeper to get wide receiver number 1, though he's not really a sleeper. But everyone always picks for the first 3. CMC, I get it. Tyreek Hill, get it. And then CD, I don't get. I personally don't. I think, again, he's better in that 4 to 5 range, because that's where I think he would really realistically go. I think anything past that would be a steal. Actually, I think in my notes here, I think what I have is, so I have CMC, because it's CMC. Tyreek Hill was number 2. Number 3 is St. Brown. Number 4, I actually have looks like I have Breece Hall, actually, number 4. And then number 5, I have CD.
Okay.
Yeah, just because Breece Hall, I mean, goodness sakes, last year, wasn't he supposed to be recovering from like a ACL injury? I mean, it was a clean ACL injury, but it didn't seem to bother him. He still finished, top 3 or top 5 or something like that?
Yeah.
Anyways.
I think he was, wasn't he? I think he was the RB2 behind McCaffrey.
Yeah. So that's why I have it listed as that. I look at things a little bit differently than a lot of the media gushes over what happens last year. I don't care what happened last year. I care about what will happen this year and what this year's competition will bring. Because everybody loves to just talk about the same people over and over and over again just because of, their upside's great, upside this, upside that. I'm like, cool. Why don't we talk about the guys who deserve to be the talks for this year? Because, again, if Amon-Ra St. Brown ends up being wide receiver 1 this year, then everybody's like, oh, man, geez, he was like pick 5 or 6 or 7 in my league, it's great value, exactly. So I'm going to steal that value away from the rest of my league mates here, I
want to actually do a quick recap of the first, I'm going to call, I'll list off the first 3 rounds. But before I do that, if you follow the show for any period of time, normally at some point during the show, I like to spring a game of keep, trade, cut on Austin and my guest. But Austin isn't here to take the bullet for you today, Alex. So you're going to have to answer this one by yourself. And I actually set this question up specifically for you. I'm calling it the Fly Eagles Fly edition. Woo! I want you to keep, trade, cut for your fantasy team. You have to keep, trade, cut these guys. AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts. Obviously, you guys have top-tier talent at every position. Keep, trade, cut your best 3 players, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts for fantasy football purposes.
All right. Well, without knowing the parameters of whether it's super flex or not, so let's just pretend that.
Let's assume it's not, because I think that makes this really boring.
Not.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then that's kind of simple. I would keep AJ Brown because he can give you top 5 or maybe even better wide receiver value. He's just that good. Saquon, I would actually cut just because even though he's up behind that tremendous offensive line, I'll be honest with the way that I like to try to build my teams, even though I love trying to get a superstar running back here and there. No, I can find running back value, maybe younger too, elsewhere. And then Jalen Hurts, I guess I would trade him because he has such tremendous value and he's a cheat code. So because he's a cheat code, I could get so much back for him that I think his value would outpay himself with the trades that I could pull off. I could be a Bill Belichick man of trades, and get all these great talents for a bag of Skittles if I really wanted to.
And that's what's funny. So Equinox pops up that you got to cut Brown. And I wasn't sure how I was going to answer this question.
Ouch. That's okay.
Until I saw, did I just time out? Good thing I have a queue set up, but that is definitely not who I would have taken.
It's okay. Some people have wrong opinions. It's all right. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I get for timing out in my own draft. But always have a queue set up. So I like David Njoku as a scorer. I just think I could have gotten him way later in the draft. But that's neither here nor there. Back to the point at hand here. Thank you, Scampers. I got that notification just a second too late. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is I wasn't sure how I was going to answer this question. And then I saw how late Jalen Hurts went in this draft. And late is relative because we're in a draft with a bunch of sharps. You guys have all mock draft with us for ages. You can probably wait on quarterback, and a lot of people are playing that game. But he was also the 4th quarterback off the board, Alec, and I don't know how I feel about that. In a fantasy football where rushing upside is king, I believe, if I'm seeing this correctly, Allen was the first quarterback off the board, then Patrick Mahomes. And then Hurts and then Lamar Jackson, right? Yeah, because it's going back that same way. So, or Jackson over Hurts. So I find that really, really interesting that we're getting now Jalen Hurts, who was the number 2 quarterback in fantasy last year, has led the league in rushing yards basically since he's been a starting quarterback. For quarterbacks, he's led the league in rushing yards. Yet he's falling to number 4 against guys you mentioned. There's a lot to wonder about what's going on with Josh Allen in the Buffalo offense. Patrick Mahomes was like the QB 8 in fantasy last year, and we still haven't seen a prolific passing season from Lamar Jackson since that MVP year. In a draft like this, letting Jalen Hurts fall to the 5th as the 4th quarterback, that feels like tremendous value.
No, it's tremendous value. I think it's because Vince went on auto pick for that pick. So I think that's
I didn't even notice it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so otherwise, you're only picking Lamar there simply because you think that he's going to outpace,
That was his auto pick. You're absolutely right.
Okay. And when I saw Hurts was there, I was like, that'd be funny. Fly Eagles fly. Let's go. But no, this is a bit of good advice for people who are in tight end premiums. So I just want to give a little nugget there for some people. Hopefully not my league mates, but it's screw it. If you're going to listen, you're going to listen. If you're in a 1 QB type of league, you don't need to go early on any quarterback. If the tight end premium is really high, you would be much better getting 1 or 2 higher end tight ends and getting your QB towards the latter part or near like, let's say you fill out the rest of your offense first and then you go QB. Because at the end of the day, QB 10 to QB, I think it's 19 this year, there's not too much of a difference. So because there's not too much of a difference, why in a 12-man team, I understand a 10-man team why you might want to have an advantage there. But in a 12-man team, you don't really need that QB upside if you build everything else the way that a tight end premium should be built. I mean, if you want to go early and get Josh Allen, go ahead. It's just that I feel like in a tight end premium, him in the 3rd round, especially the start of the 3rd round, is a bit early for me. Yeah. I think Jalen Hurts in the 5th is great value. I think QBs, it's kind of like the opposite effect of a super flex. I think QBs should go like 4th or 5th and later. And then obviously in super flex, it's like 1st and 2nd or 3rd, kind of thing. So that's just my little tip is to where if you're playing a tight end premium, don't put so much emphasis on QBs. Trust me, those tight ends, if you can hold that advantage in tight end in a tight end premium, you're fine.
I love that because what I did for this very league was I knew I wasn't going to get one of the early quarterbacks. So I looked where there was a drop off, and very similar to what you said, I am willing to start my QB 17 in this 12-team league.
Right.
And to me, it's a minimal drop-off from 8 to 17. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll wait forever. Normally at a draft, you wouldn't tell your league mates, I'll wait forever at quarterback. But I will wait forever at quarterback. There are leagues where I will be the last person often to draft my quarterback. Let's take a quick look at these first 5 rounds. And as I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just read the first 2 rounds off. So the draft, honestly, everything started off pretty chalk. You wouldn't even have known it was a tight end premium league until we got a little bit later. But Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, Breece Hall, A.J. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Garrett Wilson. And then it flips around and you get a glimpse of the tight end premium. Devontae Adams, Saquon Barkley, Puka Nacua. I take Travis Kelce, Sam LaPorta, Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, Drake London, Derrick Henry, Mike Evans, Trey McBride, Nico Collins. And I'm going to continue with round 3 because, again, the tight end premium. Josh Allen, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Patrick Mahomes, Cooper Kupp, George Kittle, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, Evan Ingram, and Devon Shane wraps out round 3. And only one person has done it so far on purpose. And I do want to point out, Lewis noticed that there's a good chance Vince had Lamar in his queue because he does now have the Lamar Andrews stack. So actually, let's start with that. Stacking is something that gained a lot of popularity with the rise of best ball and DFS. Do you find yourself in redraft leagues focusing on a stack? I'm going to be honest with you. Until I started playing best ball and DFS, I never really considered having 2 guys from the same team. What really brought it to light for me in redraft was the rise, and they kind of rose together, of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. If I could have the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 tight end, it felt like I just had an advantage every week, but you're also paying for that advantage. So is stacking a thing for you in these redraft leagues?
So it's funny. Years ago, oh gosh, I can't even remember the running back's name, but it was Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and I forget who the running back was. It escapes me. But I remember I did a piece. It's not online, but I did a piece just for myself to self-reflect. What would it look like if you went after a team's best players to where you could corner the overall production, essentially?
Yeah.
So like a prime example of today's time would be Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Mark Andrews. If you get all 3 of them, you essentially have like 95% of where all the touchdowns and points are going to come from, relatively, So every week you're doing great. The only downside of that is if they have a bad week, but you kind of play for that. So I think in redraft, it all depends, 1, on your league size, and 2, obviously the type of league that it is. But generally, I care more of does the value make sense? I'm not going to purposely reach to get a stack if it's not best ball, because I know at the end of the day, I might end up getting more points from someone else that I have ranked higher. If it's within a round or half, thank you, Devontae Freeman, thank you.
Yeah.
If it's within half round, then sure, I could go for that. That's only if the other players that I want are already gone. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at that. Stacking is great. It can work. I just find that historically, it really only is really great or puckers your butt if it's the playoffs, because they have to perform for what you pick them for. And if they don't, you lose. So do that with what you will.
It's been something that's always terrified me, going with players from the same team in general. And I love that Devontae Freeman. I was about to show my age and be like, was it Steven Jackson? Yes, I'm that old. Where I was like, what Falcons running back are we talking about here? But I remember Jameis Winston's 30-30 year. I had already drafted Mike Evans, and this was right when Chris Godwin was about to blow up, and I had this feeling. And I decided not to draft Godwin because I already had Evans. And that was the year that through week 12, possibly through week 14, they were the number 1 and number 2 receiver in fantasy. And I would have been probably undefeated that season if I had taken both of those guys. But it's one of those things where you have to do kind of what you're comfortable with. But then again, there could be a lot of success if you're willing to test the waters of being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, I always say, and I say this little fact about me, is that in my spare time, I also love to train people in the world of calisthenics. It's like a hobby for me. I tell them never to pay me, because them paying me by swearing at me every name in the good book is worth it to me. So I always tell them, listen, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is the only way for you to really grow and to be successful. So that's my kind of take on that. I must say I was surprised he went Terry McLaurin, but hey, I get it. JD, he might be going for a staff later, so I get it.
I'm going to let everybody know in the chat right now. I'm typing it in this chat. At around round 10, I'm going to bump this down to 1 minute, because we are at 50 minutes so far and not even halfway through the draft yet.
Let's go. Yeah, baby.
We definitely are. I want to get the whole draft into the show so we can talk a little bit about the teams, but I also don't want to be here all night. Give me 1 second to type this up.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
After.
Well, I guess while you're doing that, I guess I'll talk a little bit more. So far, let's see here.
Well, I'm good. I got it typed in there. I wanted to ask you, Vince is also the only team that intentionally did your bully tight end strategy.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of thoughts on tight end premium, which is something that's kind of taken over fantasy football. And my co-host Austin it's kind of the running joke on the show that fixing tight end to him isn't always about tight end premium. Fixing tight end to him might be combining the tight end and wide receiver positions, and then you can throw a premium in there to make more tight ends valuable. Because when you do tight end premium, it just makes the top guys more valuable. Yet in this draft, Vince is the only one who took two of the top guys. And you said it was something you were considering there, but the way this shook out for you, you weren't able to do that.
Yes.
Obviously, landing McBride and Andrews is a good move in your book, but talk a little bit about that strategy of the bully tight end strategy in a tight end premium setting.
Perfect. So this actually is one of my favorite things to talk about, oddly enough. Oh my gosh. So tight end premium, as long as it's a juicy, big, fat old premium for those big boys down there near the line, or sometimes lined up, in the slot. Having that advantage is really crucial. Oh yeah, I see. He's already gone. That's fine. So I think the interesting thing is that in a 12-man team or a 12-man league, if you want to go that strategy, it has a pretty good chance of working. But the problem can be is that you might find yourself in a hole somewhere else. And that hole, if that hole gets worse, then you're really struggling to where you will have to use a tight end probably as a trade bait in order to fix that hole. So in 12 and a 14-man league, tight end premiums, I think if you bully that market, you have a distinct advantage over everybody else, for one, at tight end. And two, like I say, it's great for trade bait. And three, come playoff time, assuming they both don't have like the same bye week, let's say it's bye week 14, which I don't think there's not two tight ends that do, or at least that matter. I also think that tight end premium, even though the conception can be that, it just makes the top five more desirable. I think if you spin it in a way to where tight ends get, let's say, a point, like how we're doing here, and then you say they get some PPFD, so they get some points, per first down. So maybe they get like a half a point for that. Because if you look at the numbers, tight ends get the least amount of first downs out of the entire team throughout every single game. So why not give them a bit more of a premium? So that way, even if you don't get two top guys, let's say you only get one, you could grab a guy later who's more known for being efficiency type of guy, to where he's more the guy who will get you the first downs. And he may not have the most glorified stats, but in week-to-week heads, he might do better than some of those top-end guys, because maybe those top-end guys get shut down, or maybe they don't perform as well as they're supposed to. So you just got that value that week from somebody you got like 4 or 5 rounds later.
I just want to throw Scampers up on the screen. Scamper says, tight end premium is the worst.
No, you're the worst. No, I'm kidding.
No offense to this league, he says. So I did it obviously just to make tight ends viable in the flex, because you pointed out a lot of interesting facts. But in this 12-person league, there's also going to be 2 flex spots, and it's a little bit more interesting if you can maybe cook some of these tight ends up. But I agree with you, and that's why I've really liked what Austin has always said. And Austin's said, make it tight end premium, but on top of making it tight end premium, also make it where they're not required to start a tight end. So if you make all of your wide receiver spots, wide receiver, tight end, flex spots, then all of a sudden it just balances everything out. You don't have the haves and the have-nots. Let me be perfectly clear. I like what Austin says in my logical brain. In my strategic brain, who sees the advantage of winning the tight end spot, I hate what Austin says. Like I love that there's an advantage, and I love being the one who is taking advantage of that advantage. And so that's where Austin and I won't agree, where I see the sense in what he's saying. I just don't want to do it myself. As we progress into this draft a little bit, I was trying to pay attention how many folks were at least toying with the idea of 0 running back. And it looks like there were 2 teams that toyed with the idea. We've spent a ton of time talking about Vince already, but Vince starts this draft, and let me go ahead and highlight his team here, with Tyreek Hill, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, Malik Neighbors, Lamar Jackson, Calvin Ridley, Ramondre Stevenson. And then you pop over to Austin, who did it 1 round earlier. So Austin went J. Jeff, Drake London, Patrick Mahomes, Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, Aaron Jones, and Jaden Reed. So they obviously did things a little bit different. Austin is loading up at wide receiver because we can start technically 5 wide receivers in this league. He now has his 5 starting wide receivers. Vince obviously did the bully tight end. But my question to you is, looking at these 2 squads, which is Vince from the 2 spot, Austin from the 5 spot, when you look at the picks that went directly beforehand, with Vince taking Calvin Ridley, his quarterback, and Malik Neighbors, and Austin taking T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs and his quarterback, would it have been better to grab a running back earlier there? Was there running back value, or how do you feel about the 0 running back strategy in general?
So I actually am a pretty big advocate for that kind of thing, just because there's always a year where in the 7th round, there's a running back who will just hit, and he'll end up being like top 10 or top 5. And it's like, oh my goodness, you just got tremendous value off of that. I think this year, however, I pivot away from that just because running back is also the position that gets injured the most. So when you go 0 RB, you're hoping that there are RBs that you get. One, you're hoping that the league doesn't bully you. So, for example, let's take Vince, for example. Good point. He has 1 running back there. I took 3, and I mostly took Zamir White because I think that he is the guy who can finish as that top 5, top 10 type of guy who's in that 7th round. But also, if more people start taking running backs from him, he's going to be so just boned. I'm sorry, but it's true. Like, I love his roster. I love how he's going through it.
I mean, landing Ramondre Stevenson that late as your RB1 is not the worst thing in the world, but you're right. What happens in the following rounds?
Correct. See, that's why, again, I look at it. That's why for me, I was like, I could go wide receiver 4, I could. But I was like, but Zamir White's there, and I like White. Well, actually, there's 2 people that have White. All right, so I have the White team. Everybody get excited.
Exactly. You like running backs with the name White.
Yeah, exactly. I used to make a joke all the time that, I've won this draft because I have the double Xavier defense because I like Xavier Worthy. That's how I used to do things for the rookie drafts and whatnot. Like, hey, I won this because I got these guys. All right, MVP. Watch out. Yeah. But no. It can work. It all just depends on what the pieces that you go with, which is why I like Vince's team more than I like Austin's team. I think Austin, I'm looking at his team, and I like that, he filled out his wide receiver roles instead of going tight end. So he missed out completely on getting any sort of tight end that would be really valuable for him. So he decided,
which is very on brand for my co-host, let me tell you.
Okay. Well, then, when I slap him around in whatever week we're playing, then we'll see, all right? But – I like Vince's more just because the path that he took, I like more because there's more upside there that I see. Whereas Mahomes, I mean, he's great. So I'm not going to knock him for that. But I think Aaron Jones, who, again, on my leg, he might just get hurt. I mean, if he doesn't, he's a solid pick there. I just feel like he could have done things a little bit differently instead of going for these 5 wide receivers. Because I'm not sure what Higgins is going to do. I don't know if Jaden Reed's going to keep up with his efficiency because they didn't have a ton of volume last year. So that's a little worrisome. I honestly prefer. Oh, great. Well, I'll give this away just because my league mates are gonna love that. But like for example, when it comes to wide receiver in Green Bay, I actually like Wicks the most.
Ooh.
I think he has the best upside chance. And if I remember right, I think he was graded to be like the best against man coverage out of all wide receivers for fantasy. If I remember right from last year, or one of the top 3. I'll have to double check that.
And then caught a 65-yard touchdown from Jordan Love on the 3rd play of the game this past week.
Yeah. So, I mean, he just makes more sense to me later. And I already know my friend who's sitting right next to me, I already know when it's our turn to draft in my league, he's like, oh, I remember that. And I'll be like, remember that video I sent you? He knows what I'm talking about. I sent him a video saying, you're going to snipe me like 5 times, and this is the clip I'm sending you, which is just me, or not me. It's a video I found of this guy named Markiplier, and he's just like yelling at the screen, and it's like super funny. But anyways, yeah. I kind of went on a tangent there. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's absolutely fine. I wanted to throw a couple of things out there. So if you've never watched Mock It Like a Top before, normally this is a mock draft show. We decided to do things different this week. This is the first ever Club Fantasy Listener League show. So the folks who are in this draft are all folks who have done mock drafts with us in the past. Some of them are writers or are podcast hosts here at Club Fantasy, but a lot of it is our loyal followers. If you are not already subscribed on our YouTube page, man, we would love if you guys would do that. We just recently crossed 1,000 subscribers. We'd love to start working our way towards 2,000 as the season progresses. And Alec Philadelphia is in this draft. He is pick number 3, and he is someone who has been doing mocks with us this entire season. So it made sense for this listener league to get those folks on. And I wanted to give you another shout out. You've already been called the hot one, which I have no argument against, but Michael Harrington points out that you're coming here face painted. We addressed this a little bit at the beginning of the show. This shit's serious, man, right? Like we're here to win. So
yeah, I mean, we have what a good amount of viewers in here, so it's awesome. Yeah,
no, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more there, and definitely, guys, go subscribe to Club Fantasy here. They do phenomenal work here. I do try to post their content here and there in my Discord. And by the way, if anyone's wondering what it's called the Deeper Fantasy League. That's just because I like deeper fantasy. So that's what that's called there. But yeah, you don't want to know how. Gosh, I wish the guys at Dynasty Pylon were here right now because they would tell you the answer. But take a guess how many mocks I've done so far this offseason. Just take a wild guess, not just the ones with you guys.
I was gonna say because we've only hosted 25 shows, and obviously you're going to be way above that. We hosted our own over 100 Scott Fishbowl mocks. So I'm going to guess wild, and I'm going to guess you're probably still going to have it beat, but I'm going to say 150 mocks.
Oh, dang. You're close, man. You're close. I'm just sitting at 425.
Good Lord.
Yeah, no, I mock for fun. So throughout my mocking career, oh my God, it's so stupid. But and my lady could tell you that when it's mock season, she won't see me for a few months. It's okay. It happens. Love you too.
Let's talk about the kind of leagues you're in. So
sure.
Are you doing the entire gamut from, dynasty, best ball leading into redraft? And so when you're counting all those mocks, are a lot of them rookie drafts when you're trying to figure out how your dynasty rookie drafts are going to go?
All right, just give me 1 second here. I want to make this pick.
Oh, you're on the pick. Absolutely. No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I definitely don't want to have you go off the clock and have an auto pick like has run into me. Just to recap for folks who might be tuning in late, again, listener league, not a mock draft this time. It is a single quarterback 12-team league, PPR, but also a full point extra to tight ends, which is why you saw tight ends go off the board a lot earlier in the draft. But we just recently finished up talking about the kind of dyers of tight end premium, which is why after the elite tight ends go, you see a complete dead zone happen with the tight ends. But going back to your mock drafting career, does that start with a lot of like rookie drafts back in like March and April before we even know where these guys have landed? Actually, I'm telling myself next year to not go until after once it's draft night, just because though that is fun, it changes so much
from the combine to where they get drafted. So I actually don't find a need to start there anymore. I just decided that, next year I'm not going to do that.
I want to agree with you there. I'm going to cut in just real quick and we'll go back to it. But I want to agree with you because it's always fun for me as content to go back and compare and contrast what happened at the pre-draft mock drafts and then the post-draft mock drafts. But what I don't find is a ton of actual fantasy value in that information. Like, just because a whole bunch of idiots were taking a guy in the 3rd round and now he's falling to the 5th, that doesn't make him a value. That means we thought he was better than the NFL thought he was.
Yes, that I do completely agree. I remember the hype for Ben Sinnott, and I was like,
yes,
I was so confused of watching it from like before the draft and then during the draft and then after everything concluded. Then I know, everyone's just gun ho for Ben Sinnott, and I was like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, I had to go look him up too. And then the first couple of videos I found about him talked about him basically being a fullback. And I'm like, wait, this can't be the guy we're talking about.
Yeah, no. So I've warded off that. In fact, what I love doing with mocks, which is why I have such a healthy obsession. Again, 425. Healthy obsession. I look at it as, okay, I like to follow the ADP, follow the trends of what people are doing throughout the months. That's one thing I do. Once I have a concrete down of like, I go into a draft typically outside of this one, typically with like 5, 6, 7, 8 different styles that I can go. It all depends on how the board falls. And so, and with my list next to me, I can then go about doing what I need to do for each of those rounds. And then at some point, after I'm done mocking the hundreds of times, then the last bit of mocks I do, I like to call it the American Sniper mocks, which
you mentioned that earlier.
So American Sniper, against snipe. So in this case, what I would do is, whether it's against AI or against people, I would purposely do mocks where I see the guy I want and he's right there, and I just pretend he's already gone, and I go to the next.
See, that's interesting because that's something I've heard people talk about, but you've actually given it a name. I find that very interesting.
I try to come up with like funny names. Like,
no, that's awesome.
Eventually, when I tell you like about like my 2 main leagues, because I have my Dynasty League, I have another Dynasty League that I'm helping co-commish because the guy doesn't understand how IDP works, so I'm just explaining that to him. And it's great. I'm not sure if he's watching, but Jake, if you're watching, cool, buddy. Bengals ain't it this year. Just. Oh yeah, I can already see now when I go back to Discord. Anyways, he's a great guy. But in my other 2 leagues, they're not quite dynasty, so I have a different way of looking at them. But if I told you the name of like what I came up when I came up with this really cool way of scoring, how to make offense and defensive players a 1-to-1 ratio, regardless of the year. So when I made my scoring, I have it set all the way back the last 5 years of data. And I look at all that, and then I create what I would be as close to 1-to-1 ratio as possible. So that way, when you go into the drafts, you can literally do any strategy that you want. You, as the person, don't have to follow suit of a normal super flex, tight end premium, yada, yada. You can now draft how you want to, and your team will either be the most dominant defense or the most dominant offense. And I'll talk more about that later. I won't talk about it right now, because if I do, then there's a lot of things going on. I'd rather talk about what's going on than me go on about the leagues and whatnot. I can do that later.
Well, I was going to say, we're about to finish up the second third of this draft, if you will. Honestly, I just kind of want to scan the board a little bit and see if any picks stand out to you. Some of the more weird picks have been auto picks. We saw Brock Bowers go a little bit earlier. I'm a big believer in Brock Bowers, but for him going in the 4th round, but we know that was an auto pick. We talked about Lamar over Jalen Hurts. Even my Njoku pick in the 5th round in tight end premium doesn't feel right to me. I guess the first question I would ask you, kind of taking a look at what's went off the board, sure. We're seeing a ton of wide receivers in fantasy this year where everybody's just kind of avoiding running backs. And in our league, I'm going to be honest, when I was looking at the scoring, running backs did take a hit, but this is happening regardless of scoring. Is this a situation where it's like get the elite running backs early in fantasy football right now, or just wait and load up. If you take a look at Old Boy from the 7 spot here, he kind of waited on running back, and now he's just like shotgun scatter firing, grabbing, the entire AFC North of running backs. So.
Yes. I don't hate this move. In fact, I did something very similar, but I just broke it up. Because I do think if you can have a pigeonhole at any position, if it's not tight end, you should do it at running back. Only because there's so much wide receiver depth that the way that the ADP is currently set up, regardless of what you use, you're going to find great value throughout most of the rounds actually for running back. Whereas for wide receivers, I think you mentioned earlier, there does feel like there's kind of like a dead zone. And so for me, I would much rather get my 2 starting running backs, get my 3 wide receivers, and then right as that quote-unquote dead zone's going to be looming, I'm already, as you see, picking my next 2 running backs. So that way, I already have that advantage at the better running backs. Then when it comes back around and people are still picking running backs or whatever else, I can then pick the wide receivers who I go off of upside, or if I think they could have a huge boom, but they're not starters. They're more of someone who I know at a certain week for the matchup, if they hit, boom, I'm going to win that week. So that's kind of how I look at a draft for like this kind of league.
See, for me, at least in my normal drafting, it's the opposite. This draft, the scoring really influenced me a lot. But for me, I've always been someone who needed to have like elite running backs. So even that A.J. Brown over Jahmyr Gibbs, which we spent a little time on earlier in the show, that was a hard pick for me because I'm just like, I don't know that I want to like pass up these running backs. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm feeling the burn right now, and I'm doing a little bit of what Old Boy's doing. I just don't know if Old Boy is coping as hard as I am, because like when you look at my team, I was just having a chat with someone on YouTube the other day. I normally have 3 running backs after the first 4 rounds. So for this draft, I'm again scattershotting, where I'm like, give me the old guys, Austin Eckler and Ezekiel Elliott, give me Javonte Williams. I'm just more comfortable having the elite running back, knowing I could find wide receiver talent later. But I definitely see the point where wide receiver is just more consistent right now. How do you feel about this point where 12-team draft, everybody kind of knows everybody's going quarterback late? Right now, we only have 8 of our 12 teams with quarterbacks. Does that seem about right to you as we're moving into round 10?
Yep. Actually, this seems about right. I was actually expecting so a bunch of quarterbacks went in, round 7, round 8?
Yep.
I was kind of expecting more running backs coming around 9 or around 10-ish. I know we're in round 10 right now, just because I think this is usually a good spot where, unless there's a guy you really want, you could definitely get your quarterbacks now, because there's several really good ones, which again, the difference between 10 and 19 is very small. So you could definitely rock it. I'm looking at my board right now, and there's a couple guys that I like more than, let's say, some of the QBs. But if one of those guys go, then it kind of just decides what I'm going to do. And sometimes that's just how it comes down to in fantasy. When you make your own list, you're like, oh, well, that guy's gone. Okay, well, I'll just do this now because this is the next guy on my board, and it makes sense because I need this position.
It sounds like we have a similar strategy. For me, I just keep an eye on how many have went, so I know how many need to go before I start to get uncomfortable. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at too, is I have my list, but I have these guys where I'm like, I kind of prefer them better than quarterback. I don't mind telling you guys, I came into this thing thinking I was going to need to go quarterback in round 10, but this game of quarterback chicken that everybody's playing makes me feel a lot more comfortable about not forcing the quarterback position right now. Alec, one of the things I've noticed is when I'm in drafts with sharps, and this has been a very sharp draft, but even when I started in this industry and started doing drafts with other folks in this industry, around round 5 was always the point for me where I'm not going to mess around anymore, and I'm going to take Jalen Hurts, which is what Old Boy did there. And to be honest, I probably should have considered it. And if Hurts had got to me 2 picks later, I may have considered it, except for the fact that ended up being my auto pick anyway. But yeah, I always find it interesting to see the strategy. Now, you seem to be in a ton of leagues. One of the questions I didn't get a chance to ask you, do you have like a local home league where you're able to do a live draft with folks, or has most of your fantasy time been online?
So I used to do that. So another reason why the server was created was simply so that way all my friends I left behind in Washington State, that's where I'm from, and I moved down here to Florida. Thank you, Bella. I know. The move was tough on all of us.
I was going to say, Bella's saying shout out to Washington.
Yeah, I know exactly. She hears something probably from one of our neighbors, most likely.
Yeah, that's how my dad is.
But anyway, so what I do in the server, it's kind of cool. So if you look at the voice channels, because I have voice channels there, so if you want to mock together, they can also chat with one another. Kind of like how we're doing. And I find it more engaging that way because you can really help each other out and think more critically. Yeah. But in there, I have it set up so that way I can stream my leagues and then everyone can still chat in the Discord. We're all still there. We're all still friends because I do miss that aspect. And what I also used to do, again, because I live so far away, I can't do anymore. I also, at the end of the year, I also would do an award ceremony.
Yes.
So then I would dress up like the commissioner, and then I would want everybody to hopefully boo me, and they never do. I'm like, gosh, how long till I go down? Dang it. Roger Goodell, come on now. But it was fun, and I still do that. But I do.
I'm going to just interrupt you because I shortened the clock and you are on the clock right now. I don't want to see you get auto drafted.
Thank you. Well, actually, it's perfect because wow.
I'll say, and while you're making your pick, I have people asking for your Discord link in the YouTube channel. So if you want to get that, I'm more than happy to drop it out there.
I think I dropped it already, but let me see.
Oh, did you drop it in Sleeper? Okay, I'll go find it.
I might have. Oh no, I think I slept it. I didn't. Oh, you know what? I'll drop it in Sleeper too. Give me 1 second. So. Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, definitely want to make sure we get you as much publicity there while we can. Yeah, I do not see it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. So many
doesn't
things
really matter, but I'll go with the efficiency upside. There we go. Okay.
But yeah, if you could drop it, if you you could also drop it on StreamYard in the private chat, and then it's easy for me just to copy and paste it and get it over if you click down on private chat over there. So
sure, hold on. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, you take your time with that. So I just want to draw your guys' attention to a few things on the board. I'm going to scroll up a little bit just so you guys can see what I was talking about. Running backs, very sparring until round 3, and the tight end premium kind of exacerbates that. But then you're going to notice a cutoff, and I want you guys to think about this when you guys are going into your home league drafts or any other drafts that you're doing, is there's still good running backs when you hit the round 4, 5, and 6. Joe Mixon was a top 10 back last year. Kenneth Walker has that potential. Rashad White, that talking about Philadelphia, he got Rashad White and Joe Mixon. Alvin Kamara might be the second best weapon overall in the New Orleans Saints yet again. So there's still value in those middle rounds. Raheem Mostert's an interesting one. And actually, I might ask you about Raheem Mostert here in just a moment because there's been a lot of debate. Yeah, there's been a lot of debate about what to make of Raheem Mostert right now. But when you look at these running backs, as we start to hit this round is when the names start to get a little ugly because you're dealing with backups. You're dealing with Ezekiel Elliott, who looks like an 80-year-old man out there. Trey Benson, who you don't even know if he's the actual backup in Arizona right now, because right now Amari DiMercato is actually playing ahead of him. So there's a lot of interesting, and now you're starting to see that run of quarterbacks. This is the best thing. We talk about doing this with mock drafts all the time, but don't just think about this in terms of mock drafts. You guys have the ability now to do something that a lot of people in your league don't, and that is you're watching a draft happen, and these are the kind of trends you're seeing now in real drafts. And the next question I was going to ask you, Alec, was when you get into your more localized drafts, do you start to see people less willing to wait on quarterback and less willing to pivot to wide receiver? Does everything start to fall back in line? Or do you really start to see even – I don't like calling them casual fantasy players anymore, so I call them seasonal fantasy players, the people who come back in August. Do you start to see them falling in line more with what the industry is doing, which is punting at quarterback and moves like that?
Well, in effort to not call anyone out in my league – who is currently watching, I will say that, yeah, I think with home leagues, you kind of get how people are going to draft. In fact, it's only a stressful time if somebody's new in your home league and I don't know how he drafts. Now I need to figure out how I'm going to do things. And then also the more information you get, typically the better. It means it allows you to be able to see the true value of these players. And if you know that your league likes to punt QB or punt tight end, even if it's like a super flex or tight end premium, which I don't know why, but hey, some do, then you just take the benefits from that. You just go with it. And also remember that it's your home league. There's a big difference between your buddies that you're smacking around and people online who you don't really know. Obviously, if it's a competitive bunch, you always want to be competitive and talk your talk, But with home leagues, you should just, keep in mind that you don't want to be too overly critical or be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you didn't pick this guy. He's so good, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Don't be gatekeeping, I guess what I'm trying to say. Don't be a gatekeeper for your home leagues. Online leagues, go nuts. Freaking everyone on Sleeper that I argue with, I feel like I'm on Twitter again. There's and then there's typing away their opinions. And I'm over here just I'm just going to mock. I'm fine. It's whatever. I don't really care. Anyways,
one thing I'll throw out about playing with friends, even friends that you only know really online, is, man, does it get heartbreaking when they know your draft habits. Because 2 players that I was eyeballing for this turn for myself were Brandon Cooks, that my buddy Lewis over in England just took from me, knowing that I'm a big Brandon Cooks guy. And then Wendy breaks my heart with the snipe of the century. Jared Goff was going to be my pick by far. That is a quarterback that I am in love with this late in drafts, and to lose him 1 pick ahead of time just destroys me right now. So that's one of my favorite part about home league drafts. I am from Northeast Ohio, and so my 2 main home leagues are just filled with Cleveland Browns fans. And it's one of 2 things that I have to decide to do when the Browns are really hot and have great players, like an uninjured Nick Chubb. I like to maybe sometimes grab them just to make the Browns fans mad and see what kind of trade I can get from them later. But then the other thing you see Browns players go way earlier than they should be going. And I always have found that really, really interesting. I don't remember. Do you remember Josh Cribbs back in the day, who was the elite return guy for the Browns? He would always get drafted in our league, despite the fact that we didn't pay for return yards. It was only return touchdowns. So you were just hoping that he returned for a touchdown that week, which very rarely happened. So,
good pick. That should be a great pick. Again, home leagues. I don't.
The difference in home leagues can be so fun and so infuriating.
It really can. Fun fact: the first year that I won my home league was only because somehow from the 9th spot, even though it was stated that it's a super flex, I got both Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Round 1 and 2. Sure, my wide receiver room was terrible, but guess what? That year, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes were 1A and 1B as far as fantasy points were concerned. Oh, Bell, thank you. Oh, is someone home? Wonderful.
I was to say Bella is very against the bully quarterback strategy.
Yeah, no, she very much is. She's just such a vocal and wonderful pup. She's a corgi, so she's adorable. Yeah, but very loud barks. Oh my goodness.
My wife and son are obsessed with corgis.
Oh yes. Well, Bella's a good girl. Oh, she already had it down too.
I know, but I'm just trying to keep it quiet.
Okay, that's fine. If she continues to be good, maybe I'll let her make an appearance on stream because she is adorable. Anyways, awesome. to go back to what we're talking about here, I'm actually liking the way that this draft is shaping up. There's a couple of surprise picks for me to see for sure, but
I say please call them out because everything's moving a little quickly. So if there's something you're noticing that I'm not noticing, please call out the surprises.
For one, I actually like the Brooks pick. I just because he's. So Brooks,
Lewis is having a hell of a draft right now.
I like the Brooks pick, not because I think he'll be anything special his first year. It's because I think he'll be great the second half of the season. He's a okay. See, as soon as I said Wicks, so what do you know? Ooh,
I was going to just point out.
Love.
It's an interesting build for Lewis because he has Bijan and James Cook, so he doesn't need to rely on Brooks right away.
No, he does not, which is good because I think he'll be great later down the road, and that's why I think a lot of people, if he's not doing good, they might either bench him or drop him or lowball trade, and I'll gladly take that trade every time because I think he'll be really great. Let's see, since you did that.
I know you already noticed. Yeah, I was going to say, so Shia straight called his shot.
He just sniped me. I have words with this. You know what's okay? when we get down to our league, trust me, I'm going to bully you so much. You're going to understand the wrath. All right.
While you're making your pick, I'm going to get Scampers up on screen because Scamper said Lewis is killing him. And I want to give Lewis his props. If you guys watched our show, I believe it was about 6 weeks ago. It was my second Scott Fishbowl draft. Lewis was my guest, and I met Lewis through the Scott Fishbowl Live in New York City, and he is amazing. He is British. He lives in New York City. He's actually over in England right now, but such a sharp drafter. And if you look at this draft from that middle 6 spot, killing it. Grabs Bijan Robinson, a little bit of a hero running back, but then grabs James Cook. So really it's more of a balanced approach. Still lands Dallas Goedert for the tight end premium. What is your take, Alec, on Anthony Richardson? I am notoriously terrified of Anthony Richardson, but with the caveat that if I don't have to pay a top 5 pick for him, if I'm able to get him in the middle of the 7th, I think I'm a little bit more willing to gamble on him at that point. Obviously, we saw a lot of really, I said a lot, and that's not true. We saw some really good from Anthony Richardson, but we also only saw him finish 2 games last season.
So early in the season, I was off him completely until I remembered what his injury was. And I was like, oh, never mind. I'm not too scared of him. Actually, oddly enough, I think of him kind of like how I thought of Jalen Hurts right as he was taking that starting role, where he only had that limited sample size, and everyone was like, oh, he's not the best passer. He's not the most accurate. He turns over the ball, blah, blah, blah. But his rushing upside is great. So I picked him, and then that year he was phenomenal. He was like a top 4 quarterback. Yeah. So I think for Anthony Richardson, I could see top 4, or obviously his upside's 1, but I think I could see him be like quarterback overall 4, and I think where he got him was pretty great. I love the way that he's designed his team because it's exactly how I would do it.
I was going to say
the way he's doing it. Anthony Richardson, 7th round, is such a great bargain for a guy who, if he gives you that top 4 upside, like I'm saying that he can,
that's a win.
It's a win. It's a win automatically.
Because if you look at the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft, they were Allen and Mahomes in round 3, Jackson and Hurts in round 5. He was able to wait 2 full rounds to get his quarterback that you're saying could have the same exact upside as those guys.
Exactly. And so, again, he's taking a shot there, and I love when he did. Actually, when I was looking at, I think it was the 6th round, I saw him there, and I was like, if I get him, that would just be the icing on the cake. But I was like, but then I'm missing out on the last bit of wide receivers that I want. That way my roster is built the way that I like it built. So it's always top down heavy and goes all the way down the list too. That way I can corner the market on running back and have good wide receivers, a good tight end, a good quarterback. Overall, everything's sticking together and it's consistent. Whereas I love the way his is. James Cook in the 5th, perfect value. Anthony Richardson, 7th round, perfect value. Tight end premium, Dallas Goedert, even though he's on the Eagles, that has tons of weapons anywhere. Who cares? Tight end premium. He's going to have games and weeks where he's amazing. Perfect value there. Brooks, great late round pick, great. Ty Chandler, who he just picked, perfect. Again, a guy I thought about picking there as well. He's doing everything right, which I think is going to frustrate everyone else around him if they built their rosters, I guess, for this draft the wrong kind of way. Because now him, a few other people here that I'll look at their rosters here shortly. The way that we're building it is definitely going to be to where if everyone else starts getting the injury bugs, oh no, you're looking at these top dogs because they hold the market,
Yeah, 100%. You want to talk about frustrating? Let's talk about the amount of teams drafting backup quarterbacks this early. Now, I know some of them were auto picks, but my goodness, do you think teams still feel that they need a backup quarterback, or do you think this might also be a situation where they saw teams like me waiting too long on quarterback and just wanted to stick it to me? Because if you look in between me and where I took Chuba Hubbard to Trevor Lawrence, we had Scampers take a backup quarterback. I know he's in the chat. And we had Duarte take a backup quarterback. Now, both of them, Jaden Daniels, like Joe Burrow, we've already talked about injury problems. Kyler Murray has had injury problems. So I'm not saying they didn't need backup quarterbacks, but I'm not saying that they didn't do this just to screw me over. Plus, this is a league where trades are enabled. So
no, honestly, Ryan, to each their own. I personally in a 1 QB league, bro, I'm like, nah, I'm fine with my one. Like, okay, here's a little nugget of advice for people who aren't too into fantasy and you stumble upon this video. I don't know when it could be, I don't know, the summer of next year. I don't care. But here's a little nugget. If you're in a 1 QB league, if you end up getting a top elite type of QB, don't go second QB.
I
don't.
agree.
At all. In a 12-man, 10-man, even borderline 14-man. If you have a top 5 QB, do not go second QB. That's a waste of a pick because if that QB ends up, staying healthy all year, which most QBs hopefully do, right? That's what we want.
Certainly the thought going in.
Then it's a wasted pick, and then it was a wasted draft pick. And guess what? If you end up losing your playoffs, you could trace it possibly all the way back to the draft. Now, again, maybe that's being a bit more critical, but in this kind of league, no, I don't see the need to go a second QB. Everyone's picked their QBs at a pretty good spot. If you go a second QB, it's only because you're worried about, like you said, an injury in the past, or maybe hypothetically speaking, the O-line is trash and that they take a lot of hits, so they might miss a couple of games. But I would rather stream quarterbacks, just like how some people like to stream defenses or kickers, So
I happen to do the streams of the week here at Club Fantasy, and the ones I do are defense, quarterback, and tight end. I say I'm not an expert at the kickers. I leave to our good friend Lynn Dellians from Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. But quarterback, tight end, and defense are ones that I love to stream. I'm going to give you time to talk about your entire draft. But the next thing I kind of want to ask you is, due to auto picks, we just saw Wendy's team take the first kicker and the first defense.
Woo! MVP.
I was good. Yep. I have written articles when I started in this industry for the fantasy footballers about not drafting a kicker and a defense where it's not required, because I am all about streaming the position. How do you feel about that strategy? Whereas a platform like Sleeper is not going to require us to fill those positions.
That guy. Oh, sorry. I was just looking at this Colby Parkinson. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? Oh, wait, he's the new starter, right? For the he is.
Yeah, starter for the Rams while the injuries are going down. Certainly pumped up by the Titan premium a little bit.
Okay,
so.
I get it. Throw a dart. I get you. Save it.
Exactly.
I get you. It's all right. Anyways,
how do you feel about drafting kickers?
Yeah. So
okay. Yep.
Yeah. No, don't worry. I sometimes remember these things when I'm on camera. So I think streaming those positions, unless scoring is like heavily changed, I totally am with it. I haven't really streamed it. So typically in the draft, it would be like my last 2 picks because I really don't need to worry about it. And it's mostly like kickers, team defense, because I know that you do stuff with this league, at least what I noticed with the scoring. So defense, I wouldn't stream too much. Kickers,
defenses can score a ton of points. My goal when I pump up the defenses is I want the good defenses to be able to score like a quarterback when they have good weeks. And then I want there to be a big difference between a good defense and a bad defense. Those are usually my main focuses when I mess with defensive team scoring, because I just feel like there needs to be a differentiator. I want the bad defenses to typically have 0 to 5 point weeks, and I want the really good defenses. I think I went back and looked. There are good defenses when they have those monster weeks that could put up 40 points in this league. And that's kind of how I want the differentiator on a onesie position like defense, because there are 32 defenses. There are 12 of us. There needs to be some value in looking for the right matchup when it comes to defense.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I was just looking at what I wanted my last wide receiver pick to be, and man, I don't know why nobody loves this guy. It like really makes me like just question if the media just loves to just downplay certain people just for my benefit, because every year there's always one player that I find and they just rise to the occasion. Last year, I know in one of my leagues, I picked up Puka Nacua. I was like, I think he'll be great, so I did that for him.
Are you calling your shot that Malachi Corley is the next Puka?
No, don't you dare try to trap me there. I ain't falling for that crap. No way. But what I will say about the guy is that coming out of the draft, he's the best receiver for yards after the catch. He's better than Marvin Harrison Jr., and he was proven that with the stats better than Ladd McConkey, better than Neighbors. If you look at what he does, he is phenomenal at that. And Aaron Rodgers is known as a QB to get wide receivers great, put them in great positions to get yards after the catch, big-time plays. He's a guy who's going to be starting on that offense that, again, when you look at what he's accomplished for a late dart throw, and if Aaron Rodgers doesnent go, my leg, in the first 4 plays of the
on the 4 plays,
then, hey, it'll be great. Great time. He's got Garrett Wilson to worry about, but so did Jordan Addison last year with Jettas, and he did just fine there. So I think he's not going to be Puka Nacua-esque, but I think he might surprise people. If he ends up being in a top 20, 25 wide receiver finish, then that's phenomenal value, and I'll take that.
That's impressive, and it's not like the Jets are established behind Garrett Wilson. You have Mike Williams, who's coming off of his own ACL injury. You have Allen Lazard, who's getting up there. And then there were the stories after the draft that Aaron Rodgers took to this kid, Malachi Corley, and that's not something that we often hear about Aaron Rodgers. We kind of talked a little bit about this earlier, and you mentioned that Dontavian Wicks is your favorite. I was a big Jayden Reed guy, but what I've noticed is if someone is the number 1 in Green Bay, there is an insanely tremendous value right now. We have Jayden Reed going here in the 7th, Christian Watson at the end of the 8th, Romeo Doubs I just saw it, in the 10th, and then you got sniped on Dontavian Wicks, and I to use your American Sniper reference, I wonder where Wicks would have ended up if Shia didn't snipe you and you weren't in this draft, because I think in a lot of drafts, Dontavian Wicks isn't even going. Obviously you like Wicks, but let's take him out of the equation for a second. For the guys who were the more established receivers, Jayden Reed started off with all the hype, but it really seems to be pivoting to Doubs or Watson. If you had to choose one of those 3 to go behind Wicks, who do you think is going to be the more established player for that team this year?
So remind me of the first 2 options there, just real quick.
Oh, just the Green Bay wide receivers. So Jayden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs.
So man, if Debro was here, him and I would totally have fighting words. But then I would end it with my claim to fame joke with him, which is, hey, I tell you what, if I end up being right, then I can take your hairstylist from you. All right? Okay, good. sounds phenomenal. So I liked Christian Watson the first year that he was in the league. I was hoping to draft him the second year, but I guess I'm glad I didn't. This guy has been constantly getting hurt. I don't consider him the wide receiver 1. I don't, just because of health alone. Unless he can prove to me he can be healthy for a full season. If that's the case, then yes, then he's a phenomenal pick. But I don't think he will. If he does, then I would love to be proven wrong, because I generally think he's a tremendous talent that deserves to shine. But if it's not my boy Wicks, and I don't think it's Watson, then really, and I don't really believe too much in Doubs, so it would be Jayden Reed. And I also drafted Jayden Reed last year, and I used him and Love to win me a Super Bowl ring. I actually have it on right here in my one hand.
That's
awesome. So it's funny because I drafted Love as my QB3 last year, and I think I got Reed as like wide receiver 4 or 5, something like that. And I was like, you know what? Jayden Reed's going to be special, but he'll be special when it matters. Like I said, my later round picks are always on guys who I think, you know what? When it matters most, they will hit. And when they hit, everybody will be like, oh my gosh, how did I lose when I had CMC? That's garbage. I'm like, well, fantasy happens.
Exactly. And you're right about them hitting at the right time being important, because it's easy right now when everybody's healthy to be like, Christian Watson has that thing. But the problem is, as you pointed out, we don't know when and if we can trust Christian Watson. And so it's great if Christian Watson can hopefully get you a win or 2 early on. But if it's Jayden Reed in December, that's going to be way more valuable for fantasy managers.
Correct. And also, I just wanted to say this, but earlier I was really excited because I can finally pick an Eagle player. The stars have aligned. Let's go with the greatest kicker, Jake the Make Elliott. Woo! Woo!
Well, what's funny is if you wouldn't have said anything, there's a chance you could walk out of here with the Eagles defense too.
Yeah. No, believe me. In like every mock I know I have, but now that I've said that, watch. She over here is like, oh, well, I'm really going to break the
I was
Eagles
just going to say, you literally have the sniper
here,
extraordinaire one spot ahead of you.
This is a call out for you specifically, all right? If you take the Eagles defense, you particularly, I'll make sure, I'll do everything in my power with my random spinning wheel that decides our draft order that you get like the last pick. And then somehow you just get skipped on the second and fourth round, all right? Don't you do it. I'm watching you. Don't do it for the clicks.
Because this show is going so long, I'm going to quickly do a recap of my draft, and then I'm going to let Alec do his, and then I'm going to get us the hell out of here. So as I mentioned early on in the draft, I normally go running back. I got scared off by Jahmyr Gibbs. I probably should have taken Barkley or Taylor, but I saw A.J. Brown there. I knew I had an Eagles fan on the show. I went with A.J. Brown, plus the scoring tends to lend itself to wide receivers. Kelsey, again, it's a tight end premium, and ETN is a back that I believe in. From that point, I kind of leaned into the wide receiver thing. The Njoku was an auto pick. I couldn't even tell you who I would have probably taken there. Probably Josh Jacobs, just because, again, I was getting a little nervous about my running back situation. And then you can see that in my draft that I got nervous about the running back situation, because after I did those 3 wide receiver picks, I just leaned into the running back. Austin Eckler is a guy who I think could end up being the second best pass catcher in Washington. Javonte Williams is showing a lot of juice early in camp. Ezekiel Elliott isn't, but he's a starting back, so I figured why the hell not. Same thing with Chuba Hubbard. I happen to cover the Panthers for Football Guys, and Chuba Hubbard seems to be a very big part of what Dave Canales is trying to install there. And then I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, that I was the last person to draft a starting quarterback, and it was Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one. I do like the fact that I was able to pair him with Christian Kirk. We spent a little bit of time in this draft talking about stacks, but I was able to pair Trevor Lawrence with Christian Kirk. I don't mind him as my starting quarterback in a 12-person league. I would have much preferred Jared Goff. And Jaden Daniels was actually the player I was going to gamble with. Duarte got him. Scampers called himself out in the chat that he took Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa to compare or to make perfect stacks for Miami and Arizona. So he didn't do it just to spite me. And then I finished up with wide receivers because, again, I feel that this format lends itself to wide receivers. This is a kicker and defense league, so I'm going to have to make a cut at some point, but I'll let training camp play out, see who gets hurt, who doesn't get hurt, and figure out who I'm going to add as a kicker and defense. Alec, you don't have to talk about all your picks. Talk about anybody you didn't get a chance to talk about. Talk about your strategy, if it had to change, all that kind of fun stuff.
Perfect. All right. So let's talk about the future champion of this league. Thank you, everybody. Woo! Let's go. All right. So
I love it.
All right. So I loved my first 2 picks, mostly because I saw all the tight ends I wanted for the second round were taken. So I was like, okay, it's whatever. So Amon-Ra, Sun God, like I said, already said before, wide receiver 1 upside. I think he can do it. He's the best odds to do so. Mike Evans, solid wide receiver 2. Kincaid, he's really the wide receiver 1 in that that Bills offense.
Yeah, that's a good point. You got 3 wide receiver 1s to start your draft.
Essentially, that's and one's with the premium. And then Mixon, Percy picked him there because I knew that his value is truly the 4th round. Rasheed White, again, for the second year in a row, he falls to like the 5th round. It's kind of odd to see from a guy who finished, inside the top 5 of running backs.
I was going to say top 5 back last year and still really the only back they have.
So as much as I'm not the biggest fan, I've been burned probably twice now on the Buccaneers running team, running offense, because I do take offensive line into consideration, but he catches the ball. So he's worth it. Keenan Allen, yes, he's old, but gosh darn, is he so good when he's out on the field. I love that wide receiver. He's one of those old – I know everyone talks, especially in Dynasty, how they don't like older guys. There are just some guys that you just can't say no to. Same with defense. You could look at –
You do not – so here's what's funny. My 2 favorite players in the NFL. I'm a big thing, like Taylor Swift, a big thing with the number 13. My 2 favorite players in the NFL are Mike Evans and Keenan Allen. So instantly I adore your team.
Well, thank you. Oh, shit. Yeah. Anyways, and then Zamir White, love his value there in 7th round. Oh, my gosh, give me that every single time. That's a guy who he's, to me, that 7th round back who can finish as a top 5, top 3 running back. That's what I truly consider him to be.
With the volume that should head his way.
Tajee Spears, honestly, it's a double. There's two reasons why I picked him. Because your league does have a very tiny version of it, but it does have a return yards aspect.
Yep.
So even though that won't warrant many points in this league, which is why I purposely am not going to say their names because I know that I'll get sniped in my actual draft, but there's some other talented returners out there, both offense and defense, that it just doesn't become worth it. So Spears, he does returns as well as he's, I think, the true RB1 for the Tennessee Titans. And for goodness sakes, he took away carries from King Henry. Like, enough said. This guy is phenomenal.
A little bit easier to steal touches from Tony Pollard than Derrick Henry.
Oh, for sure. 1,000, because both Tony Pollard and Tajee Spears, who's going to spearhead that running back group, they're both like similar type of running backs. The difference is that Spears, I think he runs hard. He runs so hard, and he can prove why he could also finish somewhere in like top 15, 16 range for RBs, which would be tremendous value for him. D-Hop, obviously, I never get D-Hop when he was really freaking good. So I thought, let's see what else this guy's got, you know? At best, he's like a wide receiver top 20. I'll take the value. Jacoby Myers, well, I lost out on Lockett. Thanks, Austin. So I'll say Myers is the other version of that, you know. So why not get him? And then Brock Purdy, because that is a perfect round to get either Love or Brock Purdy. I looked at they both, relatively speaking, the way that the season ends, roughly the same value. You could say Love has a tad upside with rushing, which is why I thought about going his way. But Brock Purdy is a efficiency machine. I expect him not to throw many interceptions, and if he continues that trend, that makes him just a slightly better quarterback option for me.
I say 30 touchdowns last year with not a lot of turnovers. So.
Yeah, and then Conklin, literally pull this guy's stats up. It's weird. He has like the same number of receptions and targets, I think, in 2 or almost 3 identical years. It's funny to me, but he's a solid backup tight end and a good tight end premium.
A Jets beat writer this week mentioned that he thinks at least to start the season, Conklin could be the number 2 receiver on that team, which is enormous.
Yeah. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, for 3 years straight, he had 87 targets, and then for 2 out of 3 years, he had 61 receptions. That's wild to me. Yeah. So, yeah, I picked him. Josh Downs, been a big fan since he came into the league. And
clearly you're not afraid of grabbing guys who are hurt right now because you know you can wait on them because you took Hopkins and now you're taking Downs.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the way that my team's structured, I can wait until Hopkins and Downs are fully recovered, and then I can start them in that lineup instead. And by around that time, it should be a little bit more favorable matchups. So it will be fine that way. And the upside you get from these guys because they're injured is tremendous. I don't see a issue. If you want to, again, a little bit of a nugget, don't be afraid to go after guys who have league-winning potential or at least get you to the championship potential, even if they're injured. Like, obviously, don't pick guys who are heavily injured prone or, like are glass knees, That's why I kind of avoid Cooper Kupp, even though I love the player because when he booms, oh, God, does he boom. When he busts, it's because he's broken. But, love the player, I do. So don't be afraid to take your shots on those guys. I picked Josh Downs because he's young and he can easily recover from the injury because it happened in the preseason. Perfect time for injuries to happen in the preseason as long as they're not season enders. As long as they're not missing too much training camp, that's why I talk about Brooks later. And then Hopkins because he's Hopkins. I know what he's capable of. And then Coley, just because I do think.
Yeah, we talked about that. So.
Yeah, he'll easily be that wide receiver 2 on that team. I actually think at the end of the year he will show why I picked him. And then Jake Elliott, obviously Eagles fan. Let's go. He's an amazing kicker. Get us back to the Super Bowl. And, of course, Eagles defense because let's go. Exactly. Fly, Eagles, fly.
All right, let's end it answering a question for somebody. 10-man league, 3 wide receiver, 2 running backs. They have the 8th pick of the first round, and they get to keep 1 person. Did they give up their 8th pick to keep Justin Jefferson, or do they take the insane value that they have on Kyron Williams or Devon Achane in the 17th round? What are your thoughts on this? I tend to lean value every single time.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, he could keep Jefferson at 8. Okay, it's the 1-8, and then or Kyren or Chain 17. Those are tremendous values, and that makes it really hard. But I'm gonna take a bit of advice that I once had from a friend. In a 10-man league, when you have the tremendous value of someone like Justin Jefferson in a 10-man league, you have a elite talent that you know is not going to be there at the 108. I mean, he might be there.
I was just going to fight with you because we saw it in this draft.
Sorry. I'm like looking at my list to my side, and I'm like, no, he shouldn't be there. But then I forget. We're also talking about like ADP wise. Yeah, no, he will be there. So, okay.
The one other thing I want to throw out there is, and he may have said something about this in his notes. Yeah. So other notable keepers are CeeDee Lamb for a first, CMC for a first, Breece Hall in the 4th. But the two I wanted to focus on there are CeeDee Lamb and CMC. If you have it, Nicholas, are they scheduled to pick before you? Would they be before the 108? Yes. Because that increases the odds that Justin Jefferson could fall to him.
That would be important to know. If you could let us know, that would be huge. Because if that's the case, then absolutely, then take the tremendous upside of, I would say, A-Chain. Kyren, great running back, but he does have issues with his foot, and he's been having issues with his foot. And I don't trust backs who historically have issues with one part of their body, because all it takes is one hit to that area, and then they're gone for several weeks. And it could always be at the worst time, like one of my league mates where he lost his star players in the playoffs, and so he lost first round. So I'd rather take the upside if that's the case. Then I'd probably take it.
He let us know that CD is 1.7, Tyreek Hill is 1.9, CMC is 1.10. So 1.9 and 1.10 don't affect him, but Hill. So there will only be 6 teams taking ahead of him.
Okay, well then, and in that case, let him go with A-Chain.
I agree wholeheartedly. That's exactly how I was going to go with this, and for the reasons that you said. I am nervous about the foot injury, even though we're getting great reports for Kyren right now. But the issue is, what happens when it's a real game and he puts pressure on that foot in the wrong way? A Chain is a guy who is just a home run waiting to happen every time he touches the ball, and it seems like they want to get him more involved. And you know what, Nicholas? You said you're thinking it too. Go with your gut. You have 2 people here agreeing with you. That's the right pick there. So.
Yeah, and also I gotta say, my man, it must be great to just have someone on the show that you both are just like, oh yeah, no, I agree with that. There's no conflict, no nothing.
Well, Josh actually hates when there's no conflict, but he's not on this show, so it doesn't matter.
You know what, Josh? I have beef with you. I want to see you next time.
I say you're both Eagles fans, so it actually would have went well. Alec, thank you so much. Once again, let people know about the Discord. We dropped the link in the chat earlier today. So.
I want to do that, and I also want to talk just real quick, because I know I mentioned it to you on Sleeper. I just want to talk a bit about the leagues just for a second.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. As long as that's okay, because I know we're at the end of the show where most people are probably leaving or whatnot. But hey, so the Discord, when you join, actually this is a bit of information that I tell everybody, so it's better if I tell you now in a video before y'all join it, because it will be down there in the comments and whatnot. But when you join, go to the roles section. I also have tutorial videos I can send people to of how to properly use the server for like the more older heads, for those people right there who might need it, so it'd be great. But we'll go to the roles section. I have like 3 questions that are there, and then it creates a custom profile for you based off those things. I've thought about adding more to it, like if you do Superflex, IDP, so it gets more in depth. So people, if they want to communicate with people who specifically know stuff about that, now they can. They don't have to just do a group post like you do in Sleeper. But just go there, answer the 3 questions. If you're not part of one of my leagues, just put the unaligned member. That way you have access to the rest of the server. And then, like I said, you can use whatever you want to do. If you want to chill and have a voice talk like how him and I do, it's great. If you want to meet some great content creators like Ryan here, or my friends over at Dynasty Pylon, or just anywhere. We have journalists on there, people who write articles. Anything you could want, you will find in that server. And then I'll do casual little fun things there too, because I want to keep it engaging for everybody. So it's different. But that's that. Now I want to talk just real quick about the leagues, because I know you were interested. Gator was interested, and it's funny. Gator messaged me, and he was like, "Oh, hey, I'm intrigued. Can you tell me about it?" I said, "Sure." On on the live stream. He's like, "Oh man, you're kidding!" He's like, "Okay, fine. I'll like tune in and like drink a beer and be half paying attention."
Yeah, he said he was having company, but I imagine this is a 2-hour show, which we don't do very often. His company is probably gone at this point.
So. I'll try to be quick with it because I prefer talking about it because I have a huge passion for fantasy football. So I'd rather talk about it than text it because if I text it, it's just I don't know, it's more anxiety kind of thing. But okay, so I have 4 leagues. 2 of them already filled. Those are the dynasty leagues. No one ever leaves the one dynasty league that I fully run by myself because they just love the way that I find ways to make dynasty unique and fun, and I find little things every year to try to improve the league, and then I try to vote on here and there for things. So I'll talk about.
There's an old saying in retail that people don't leave companies, they leave bosses, and that's a good commissioner. People don't leave leagues, they leave commissioners.
So actually, just real quick for anyone who's still paying attention, if you've thought about running your own league, but you're like really scared to do so because you don't know what to do, here are some helpful tips and advice that I've found that throughout the years have kept people entertained, coming back each year, regardless of how much the buy-in is. They just love it. One thing that you're going to find that's hard to do, and you might know this too, Ryan, is activity and retention. You know, if your league doesn't have a bunch of people talking all the time to one another, it doesn't feel like it's really that active of a league. That people are just there, set their lineups, do trades, if they even pay attention to trades, and go forth. So really just keep things engaging, keep things fun. That's why I have the Discord server. So I like to keep people engaged, fun. So there's always something to talk about. There's always something to do. So that way the league, you want to have more retention. So those are 2 things very important. Another thing is don't be afraid to be creative or unique. So for example, something that I do with my leagues I'm going to talk about, which is very exciting, is the traditional way of a money league is have first all the way up to third place win some money. So first place gets, let's say 67%, second place gets like 25, 30%, whatever. And then typically if it's a third person, they usually get like their buy-in back. That's usually fair to assume. So that's cool. People who like money, that's great. But to me, that's not that exciting if you also love fantasy. So here's some creative things that you could do. One is have there be multiple ways of winning money throughout the season. That's something that I do. Yeah. So for example, in my leagues, I do something that's called like a monthly challenge. Okay. So monthly challenges, there's like 2 of them, to where everyone's roster is pinned up against everyone else's roster, and whoever does the best at these challenges wins some money. So now you know, and so I know that, and it's monthly. So for 4 months, I do this. So that means you can pin it up however much money you want to pin up there. So now everybody, and this also solves a problem with people that are in too many leagues and they know that they're losing this one, that they just stop caring about it. That happens so much. So instead, put this little additive there. So it makes them feel like, oh, I have to engage because I know that even if I don't make the playoffs, I can still win money. There's always that opportunity.
That's very cool.
You know, so it makes it fun for everybody. Don't be afraid to be creative like that with multiple, or you can do gifts or rewards. So like trophies, jerseys, blah, 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 blah.
So talk about this specific league so we can get out of here.
Sure. So anyway, so as far as that, those are just some things that you can do. But as far as for my leagues go, so we can get on out of here because I know it's a 2-hour show. So in my leagues, I have what makes it different is that I combine the best aspects of Dynasty, Redraft, and Best Ball and fuse it all together into this keeper league that I am wanting to fill up.
Okay.
So they're like, well, how can you do that? Simple. For the keeper portion, it's rookies only, but we do a rookie draft where the order is depending on how you finished the year. So the standings determine the draft order. And then after we do the rookie draft, those will be your assigned keepers. And then those keepers will be for the next 2 years. I also innovated the way keepers work. So I actually have three types of keepers. You have offense, defense, and athlete. What's an athlete? It's just a name I came up with for the keeper leagues. They're like, well, what do we do if someone did really good, but they were undrafted?
Oh.
So the athlete spot's different. You can pick either offense or defense, but they're only good for 1 year. And they're new. And the round that they get drafted in is wherever their ADP is, but just minus a round. Whereas everyone else is minus 2 rounds. So now you can plan, and then also every other year it switches. So it switches from offense to defense, offense, yada yada yada, depending on however you started the trend. So you have 3 keepers. Then the second year you can get 2 more, so that's 5 in total. And like I said, they're all rookies because what do we love in Dynasty? Rookies. We can't stop talking about them. So we do stuff like that there. That's the Dynasty aspect. The best ball aspect is I came up with this thing called timeouts. So in best ball, you don't have to worry about setting up your lineup. You're like, it's whatever. But in this league, I give you 3 timeouts for the first 8 weeks and 3 timeouts for the last 8 weeks. Because in our seasons, we only go up to 16. That's just how my league goes. So 14 to 16 is our playoffs. Okay. Hence why I said week 14 is like the So it's fun, but I'll talk more about that in a second. But pretty much with the timeouts, so it is your opportunity every week. During that week, if a player gets hurt or underperforms of the same position, you can then swap him out with someone on your bench. But you're limited to 3 for the first 8 weeks and 3 for the last 8 weeks. So it gives you more of a feeling of being like an actual coach. That you can actually have control of your roster to do more things. So that way you don't suffer like how some people did if they had Aaron Rodgers, the first week. Lost because of that, So pretty much it alleviates that, but I wanted to make it limited so you can feel like, okay, there's a strategy behind it. I can do it this way. Again, that's the best ball aspect, and obviously it's a redraft job because it's keeper. The only other thing that I added, which I'll sprinkle in, and just so people know, I also test these things out a couple years in advance just to see how they would work in like test leagues that I do with a small group of people, just to see some feedback. I don't like to push new ideas into leagues until I see it not work. Yeah, until I see it that I've got the kinks out. The other thing I'll talk about that makes you feel more like a coach, you'll find it in the Discord. I have something called challenge play or throwing the red flag. You're like, what's this? This is something that's, at least to my knowledge, I've never seen in any fantasy league, which will make people excited, I think. It's something small, but it could determine outcomes of weeks. So what is it? Simple. Challenge play gives you the ability to reverse a horrible, horrendous call that a referee made in the game. You're probably like, interesting. How does that work, Alec? Tell me more. Simple. So I use actual examples that happened last year. I'm going to use Derrick Henry as one of them. All right. So Derrick Henry fumbled the football, but he was clearly down by contact. But the refs must have loved the bribe money just a little bit too much and said, nope, that looks good to me. That's fine. Even when they reviewed it. Nope. But everybody and their mama knows that wasn't a fumble. So if you had Derrick Henry, throw the flag. You present the evidence in the Discord where league mates and other people in the server, outside of you and your opponent, of course, will vote. 3 to 5 votes after that will determine if you're right. If you're right, you will get rewarded back the points for the lost fumble. I will modify the scores for that. Now, if you lose the challenge, then you lose an additional 5 points. Wow. So essentially, you need to be really careful when you do that. And you only get 1 per week that you can do that for. So you really have to save it for then. And if you're wondering, well, what's stopping someone from like saving it all the way until like the last game of the week? Simple. Whatever game that this supposed error came, whether it was a fumble or it was a bobbled catch that should have been a touchdown, but it wasn't, you have that whole day to refute it. After that, you can't. So, and it's just so that way people.
Oh, I see. So they can't wait till Monday night to complain about a play.
Yes, complain about that. And before, because I know I'm going to get asked this question, what are things I can't challenge? Anything that was ruled on the play as a score. So if, let's say, Derrick Henry fumbled the ball, but the defender ran it back away for a touchdown, you can't challenge it because it was ruled a touchdown on the play.
Okay.
That's too many different variables.
Because there's so many things that would have to change. I get it. Okay.
In my leagues, I also have INT return yards, fumble return yards, and sack yards added on top of that.
Okay.
For IDP
that makes a lot of
sense.
There.
So I'm not going to just do that for a simple thing of a fumble. So
let me throw one more thing at you. Do you take away that IDP's forced fumble if you reverse it? So another team does get affected by this.
Yes.
Very interesting.
They absolutely can if they have that player. Now, you could also be in a situation where maybe you just need like a little bit of points, like maybe like 1 point. And let's say your defender intercepted it, but they ruled it incomplete. You want to challenge it? Go ahead. Awesome. And like I said, 3 to 5 votes, something small outside of you and your opponent can vote it. I have anonymous voting for that reason. So that way people don't just do that. And again, the reason why I do it in the server is because another question brought up to me last year, because I tested this thing for 2 years, was, hey, what if, how league members are? They might not like that a guy's winning a bunch of weeks. They might just purposely vote in negativity just because they want to see him lose. I said, that's fair. Why not just have it anonymous for people who don't have any skin in the game? They can vote. That's fair. So I add that in there. It makes it fun. I've never seen anyone do it outside of myself. So I'm like,
and Shia's out here vouching for you. He says it's the fun leagues that you're running out there.
Yeah, for sure. So I do that. So essentially, what is this league? It's a 14-man, all offensive scoring unlocked. So that means Superflex, tie-in premium, PPC, all of that unlocked for your leisure to draft however you want to draft.
Yeah.
And on the defense side of the ball, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's very aggressive IDP scoring. And the return yards are also like a premium too. So now every position, all phases of the ball, special teams to defense to offense, it's all there. And it's wrapped up like how a dynasty league would be in a deeper fashion, but redraft style. So you have tons of starters, good, healthy bench, a lot of IR spots. The only thing we don't have, because it's keeper, it's not dynasty, is we don't have taxi squads. So we obviously it's a 1-year thing. So it's not that way. And the rookie draft is done at the end of the season. And then that's when I determine keepers. And instead of way in the beginning, like how in dynasty is, it's done towards the end. So that way people can choose who they want to keep.
Okay, I gotcha.
That's where the standings come into play. And what can you win? This is the best part I like to talk about. And after that, we can wrap things up. In this league, so in my smaller league that I just need 2 more spots to fill, but I think that will be filled by the time we're done. I think if not, ask me about it. Pick it up.
I was going to say, folks, if you have questions, get in that Discord. I've dropped the link multiple times. Get in there.
Please do. But in that league, you have multiple ways through monthly. Oh, by the way, my leagues are mythology based, so that's their theme. So it's kind of cool. You represent different mythology, and if you're in a smaller league, you have all those different ways of making money. I might incorporate that in the bigger league this year. I'll put it to a vote where I call it like the gifts of the gods, to where if you essentially win, then you just get the boon of like the extra money. I might incorporate that this year in the bigger league. I'll do that as a poll. So if you join that, we can do a poll if I want to switch it out, because how this league traditionally runs is it's a $200 buy-in. I know it's steep, but there's so much levels to this league. That's what makes it fun and competitive, and why it's worthy of that price. You get a custom fantasy Super Bowl ring. Actually, I'm wearing 2 of them now. These things are phenomenal, and they're from our partner that we use, Custom Rings.
Okay.
They're absolutely breathless taking. You can customize it all the way down to the name. I wonder if I can show that in the camera. It might be a bit blurry.
Yeah, it's not focusing, but that's all right.
That's fine. But essentially, that's what they're for. So you get a ring customized to your choice, however you would like. You get also a TrophySmack trophy. I think it's like 4 or 5 feet tall. So woohoo. And it's a perpetual trophy, so it changes hands. Whoever wins that year, And then we also have Coach of the Year. Well, it's something that I hold near to me, because Coach of the Year is where I make it feel like the NFL awards. So essentially, we all vote on which general manager we thought did the best at the end of the year during the Super Bowl week. So you vote, everyone votes. You can vote for everybody if you want to, but just vote for who you think realistically won it. And then they get a trophy for being the best general manager. It's like comeback coach of the year or comeback player of the year kind of thing, or like MVP of the year. It's one of those things I do to where when we do our little award ceremony, I dress up. You don't have to, but I like to, and then you can get that award. We also do offense of the year and defense of the year. Okay. And this is where I do all the heavy lifting. You don't have to worry about a damn thing.
First of all, it sounds like you already do a hell of a lot of heavy lifting.
I do, because I love it, darn it.
Yeah.
But so the offense of the year means that if you have the best offense of the year, so points-wise, total points, then you get a trophy for that. It's a custom trophy that I'll do probably from TrophySmack this year. And then so you get that, and then also one for the defensive side of the ball too, for defense of the year. So then you can win a trophy. So even if you don't win the Super Bowl,
there's a lot of things out there for you.
Yeah, exactly. There's options there, and then if you win your division, you automatically win $100. So even if you don't get first or second place, you do. And then first place gets $1,200 or $1,300 if you win. And then second place gets $700 or $800 if you win your division.
Yeah.
And that's and it's called The Pick Is In, based off of, the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And the other league that's smaller, $60 buy-in, is called a game of inches. And the scoring format, and then this last time I talked about, then you can kick me right off the show, bud. The last thing is, I mentioned earlier that I had a funny name for everything that I do. So the scoring, when you guys see it, if you guys just want to look at it, message me and I'll show you the league, and then you can see what I mean by the scoring looks so fun and weird. It's because it literally comes down to like the 100th of a decibel some weeks to decide who will win. And that's what I think makes fantasy great, and also makes you want to throw your god.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Across the the room. But I call this scoring, since it's so close for offense and defense, inches really do matter. Somebody's wife said it,
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's the name of it there. So yeah, so essentially, if any of you here want a deeper experience that has all these cool things into there, and I'll gladly help out. By the way, if you're not too into IDP, I'll help you out. I know the right people in the server. I know that I can help you out with IDP. I'm not in it to just lie to you just so I win money. I don't care. I care more that everyone has a good time, and that we all can just bond like a family, because fantasy is an escape for a lot of people that I know. So I think if you want a deeper experience, you want to test your metal, or you want to get into IDP, it's a deeper league, lots of starters, big bench. Just hit me up. Let me know if it sounds right up your alley that you want to give it a try. Try my 2 leagues out. I'd be more than happy to help you guys out. And that's all that I got.
There you go. The Discord server's dropped in the chats multiple times. Let Alec know. It's a very cool Discord server. I highly recommend it. Guys, if you rode with us for this long, you're all fucking legends. I appreciate each and every one of you. My outro is going to be very quick. Support women of fantasy football. Right now we have the raffles going on. It's Detroit week. We're doing a Sam LaPorta and Amon-Ra St Brown autographed jersey. $5 gets you a raffle ticket. All of the proceeds go towards our Laura Oakman Galvanized Scholarship Program. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We are off next week. I'm going to go back home and do my home league draft. The final mock draft for this show will be 2 weeks from tonight, but Gator J is still rolling with Mocking with the Stars on Mondays. Have a good night, y'all.
Fly, Eagles, fly.